If you would please stand and join me. Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, visible with liberty and justice. Okay, we'll do roll call first. Chair Grosso is here. Member Jones? Here. Member Jarvis? Here. Member Graham?
Here.
Member Maloney? Here. Member Pinsky? Here. Member Nelson is an excused tardy due to the creating of fire. Alternate Helena Duda is here. Here. In attendance, I have Jasmine Wilhelm, our secretary, Dave Gordon, attorney for the planning board, Dave Church, the planner for the planning board. Greg Molnar is not here tonight, but Christian Moore is here from CPA. Okay, I have a quick trivia tonight. The early development of the town of Rochester was based primarily on an agricultural economy. Wheat farms began in the Rondout floodplains. Area farmers became prosperous exporters of agricultural produce by working the rich Rondout Valley Basin. The agricultural economy changed drastically after the Revolutionary War. Exhausted soils, blights, and increase in production farm crippled the Hudson Valley wheat economy, and new agricultural products were introduced with new farming methods. Agriculture continued to be the dominant economy force throughout the 19th century, and the 1845 census reported that fully 68% of the people of Rochester were farmers. 68% of us were farm involved. Okay, that's trivia for today. Sorry I didn't have a better one. First on the docket, 2024-08, the Granary with Bren Hawkey and Henry Rich. This is the site plan approval in the Hamlet District at 2 Toad Path Road. Mr. Moriello is also present. Alan Dumas is present. Guys, do you want to bring us up to speed with a quick 30-second on Mike or Alan on where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, we can't finish the public hearing at the last meeting. I think that Alan did submit one of the updated plans to the board, and I responded to one correspondence. That's pretty much all.
Great. Go around the room real quick to board members and see if there's any comments or questions before we go on to the next step. Peter's late. We'll start with Cindy.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Caught you off guard this afternoon.
Caught me off guard. No, I think it is a good submittal with good planning, and I think all the issues have been dealt with. I think.
Okay.
It's good.
Zorian?
And it seems it's new plan.
Okay. It's loaded in the folder? Okay.
And I assume we're going to discuss the decision which showed up just this morning.
Of course. Yep.
We can wait till we get to the decision.
Okay.
My questions are two or three.
Sure.
Have to do with the count for traffic for phone.
Okay.
EV station, yes or no?
Okay.
And then sound.
Okay. Zach?
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. So Dave Gordon wrote a decision for us, and we've had a lot of conversation over the past, I'll call it 2 weeks, with Dave Church and Dave Gordon and myself in regards to things. I have a couple of items also as we go through the decision, which is really a great decision. Thank you, Mr. Gordon and Mr. Church, for your input on this. Excellent work. So I think we'll go right to that, and we can sort of stop as we go along. Is that okay? Pass one, leave one for Peter and pass one to Helena to follow along. Christian coming to, I got one coming to you.
They did provide lighting plans.
Yep. 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 So board, that CPL confirmed that the lighting plan changes that we requested at the last meeting are adequate, and they do meet the standard.
Also, they were planning to check the parking regulations.
I don't know if they check the parking calculations. Did you guys have a look? I know Greg talked about it. I don't know if we received a writing response from that, but we'll talk about it. We have a couple of questions on it. Okay. We give one to Alan. You guys got one? You need another one? I have one more if you want. Okay. Resolution counteracted to planning board site plan approval, July 8th. This is a long one, so I apologize for those who have to listen to me for the rest of the afternoon. This is a site plan approval at 2 Towpath Road, which consists of 6.885 acres in the Hamlet District. Seeker was completed by the town board through an EEO, Economic Enterprise Overlay process, which was done in local law 10 of 2023. The planning board application was filed on 2/2 of 24. I am skipping to page 2. The findings and conclusions are all the items that Mr. Gordon has utilized for this application, which I'm not going to read. Those are all the items that were submitted by all of the involved people. I'm on page number 3, which I guess we can, do you want to go over? I guess we can go through this. Let's back up and we'll go through these one line by line. How's that?
Let's start with jurisdiction.
Yeah, we'll start with jurisdiction. Okay, page 2, middle of the page, jurisdiction. I apologize if you're having to listen to me. Here we go. The planning board has jurisdiction over the site plan application pursuant to town law 274-A, sections 140-18.1 and 140-44.1 of the town zoning code and local law 10 of 2023. Unlike most other site plan applications, the planning board does not have the authority to undertake a plenary review of prospective environmental impacts from the project pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, Seeker ECL Article 8. Instead, the town board acted as lead agency and issued a secret negative declaration pursuant to a coordinated review in which the planning board was an involved agency. As a result, the planning board has no further authority under Seeker for this application. However, the planning board retains authority to determine whether the project complies with the environmental and other standards specified in applicable law, including the entire zoning code by reference in section 140-44.1, and whether and how the project may be conditioned to comply with such standards.
Oh, can I just jump in here?
Absolutely.
This is a really critical, in terms of jurisdiction, this is probably the most important points that everybody needs to understand. Usually when you sit here on site plan review of the project, you have almost no constraints on what aspect of the environment you can look into because typically you're the seeker lead agency, if not the only agency. So you have seeker authority and seeker allows you to look at absolutely anything. In fact, it requires you to. So things like traffic and whatever else. In this case, we have no seeker authority because because we were an involved agency, the town board did it. We do have, however, environmental review authority that comes from the laws that were enforced. So the EEOD law, local law 10, which is law, and the zoning code, which is implicated by both of them. So if there's something specific in the code that says that we should look at something that we have jurisdiction over it, that's still within our jurisdiction. But in terms of like just picking and choosing whatever environmentalists just come up with their own. So anything we do should be grounded in some section of the code or in local law 10.
Thank you. The applicable town of Rochester Code subsections which governs the project are as follows: Economic Enterprise Overlay District, schedule of district regulations, applicability of regulations, lot development standards, height restrictions, yard restrictions, landscaping, site access, parking, loading, overlay districts, aquifer protection, and floodplain. Next page, development. General commercial standards, signs, stormwater management, conversion of residential structures, site plan, and lot improvement. As the more specific law governing the project, the standards in local law 10 shall supersede any conflicting provisions of the town code, including the EEOD provisions in section 140-18.1, and in turn, the EEO district provisions in section 140.18-1 shall supersede any conflicting provisions shall elsewhere in the town code. Number 2, consistency with local law. The planning board finds that the project is in substantial conformity with the conceptual development plan as proposed and authorized for inclusion in the EEO district by local law 10 of 2023 and its associated seeker negative declaration. The project has been modified through the applicant's participation in the board's review process and conditioned herein to conform with its original parameters as determined by the town board and the standards set forth in the applicable law.
Okay, I want to make a comment on this as well. Part of our job here, because we're not the lead agency, we're operating under specific town board action. We need to make sure that this project is consistent with what the town board has done. And also it's consistent with the seeker negative declaration. And I want to talk about the neg deck a little bit. Usually, and we do this sometimes, if you do a neg deck and then you continue to review a site plan and then you may modify it. Typically, if it's smaller, if the approved project is smaller, but with every, or equal to in every parameter than the one that's approved in the neg deck, like the neg deck was for a 15-lot subdivision, and you've got and it comes down to a 13-lot subdivision, the developer pulls a couple of lots off. That's typically consistent with and within the neg deck. But I want to point something out here that's important. This is a redevelopment project this is a downtown Main Street type redevelopment project that has a whole bunch of different uses at different levels, et cetera. In projects like this, it is possible that reducing the project by eliminating certain things might actually not be consistent with the purpose of the project, because this is, you know, kind of a redevelopment which is on a fairly unique lot. Certain town boards might want to get as much in as possible and make a finding for that respect. So to the extent that this is reducing things, we're going to have to decide that those things that are being reduced, taken out, are not essential to the purpose for this redevelopment, the purpose for which the town board passed local law 10. So I want you to keep in mind that as we reduce certain aspects of the project, that we're not losing something essential. Otherwise, there could be an argument that you'll have to evaluate whether it's no longer consistent with the purpose of local law 10.
Thanks. Number 3, sufficiency of application. The planning board finds that the subject application includes all information required for the submittal under code 140-46 and local law 10. Number 4, consistency with comprehensive plan and compatibility with surrounding hamlet. The project is a mixed-use development that is an adaptive reuse of a previously developed site that was previously used for agriculturally oriented industrial and commercial activities within the Ackford hamlet. The planning board concurs with the town board finding as lead agency, which partially underlay the negative declaration, that the project is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the EEOD to revitalize the hamlet with mixed uses and adaptive reuses of existing sites, especially as an alternative to strict commercial development. The site was formerly a longtime hub of the commerce of the hamlet, and that adaptive reuse would preserve and improve the site and the surrounding hamlet, and halt and reverse the deterioration and disrepair of a site and its facilities, particularly the historical designated granary buildings. In doing so, the project will memorialize the historic character of Ackford and otherwise contribute to revitalizing the hamlet. The planning board concurs with the town board's finding that the adaptive reuse and associated mixed-use development represented by the project will be compatible with the character of the area and the town's plan for its continued development, and specifically will be in compliance with the goals and intent of the EEOD provisions of the town zoning code. The Ulster County Planning Board advised the town planning board in part that it, quote, continues to support the adaptive reuse, which we, the Ulster County Planning Board, hope will serve as a means of reinvigorating the hamlet and creating a strong community center, unquote. In its recommendation to the town board, Ulster County Planning Board wrote in part, quote, the proposal meets all those goals of providing for a mix of commercial and residential development while serving to re-welcome and reinvest in the town's historical center of activity, end quote. Next page. The proposed uses are allowed in the hamlet zoning district, including restaurant, tavern, coffee shop with indoor and outdoor dining, retail bike shop, co-working space, office space, an inn, and worker housing. Number 5, septic and water. The applicant's proposed well and septic system have been reviewed and approved by the Ulster County Health Department. No evidence has been presented to the board to call the adequacy or legality of these into question. Documentation of a Speedy's wastewater permit has been provided, and such approval is required prior to any construction start. 6, traffic. The planning board has found no evidence that the proposed project will impact the level of service of any road intersections. Instead, the project will be only reintroducing some of the historic vehicular movement found when the hamlet of Ackford was more fully developed. In its seeker review, the town board found no significant adverse impact on traffic flow after reviewing traffic counts and other data provided. Sidewalks were not considered necessary given the setting and lack of other sidewalks connections in the adjacent hamlet. 7, parking. This site plan approval confirms and applies the town board's finding in local law 10 that the proposed parking complies with section 140-17 of the code. The project is required to include 63 parking spaces. with at least 57 on-site parking spaces as well as 6 off-site parking spaces.
Or that should be changed. That's a mistake. That should be changed.
Yeah.
We're reducing it down to
Right,
57.
that changed last.
The
meeting.
parking, okay, hang on, let me rewrite that. The project is required to include 57
On-site
parking spaces on site, and everything else gets whacked.
Yep.
The inclusion of 3 ADA spaces, including 1 van accessible spaces, will provide for access by disabled people and comply with ADA requirements. During the review process, the applicant withdrew its proposal to do adaptively reuse the pole barn as artist gallery space and reduced its proposed co-working office space from 1,881 square feet to 1,460 square feet. Local law 10 allocated 4 parking spaces to the gallery, and under its allocation of 10 parking spaces to the office use, the reduction in the office space will allow for the elimination of 2 required parking spaces. Accordingly, the site plan approval includes a requirement of 57 on-site parking spaces rather than the 63 contemplated in local law 10. Moreover, since local law 10 required 6 off-site parking spaces in addition to the 57 on-site spaces, the planning board finds that the off-site parking is no longer necessary, so that the approval will eliminate the off-site parking requirement and maintain the requirement for 57 on-site parking spaces as provided in local law 10. Let me finish this, hang on just a second. In local law 10, the town board found that the gravel parking surface is acceptable to reduce stormwater runoff. The planning board has addressed with the applicant practical means for demarcation of individual spaces as part of the site plan. The planning board has addressed the inclusion of EV charging stations on this site plan. Rick.
So Dave Gordon, help me with the legal determination that what the town board did, question mark, is consistent with the parking requirements in our annual town code. When I looked at the requirements were, and by the way, we've made exceptions for parking many times for one reason or another, too much required, that code probably may need to be changed and the code will be changed, but in any case, despite my efforts to try to reconcile our code to what the town board was asking, I just couldn't do it. Except by making the assumption that the code is out of whack and requires too many to begin with.
Right.
You know, if they make that assumption, then any number works. So follow my train of thought. And I didn't come up with a number because it depended upon, it's mostly with the restaurant. So it depended upon whether I include the restaurant, how much I included for the restaurant kitchens, how much I included for the waiting area, you know, all this kind of stuff. One could argue the only thing you need to worry about is the actual seating space. But even with that, I couldn't come up with, I came close, but I can't come up with a number. Having said that, under the E, and whether or not the town board went too far in dealing with those kind of issues, and should have thought that for us, it doesn't mean that we would have found any differently from the way in which we're projecting the document. I just want to understand, are we, the comment you made up front, that we are precluded from going any further with that kind of detail, which is usually the planning board's prerogative. Are we precluded from doing that because of what the town board did in terms of the EEO, which says something about the further use of the EEO for any other project? That's a different issue. How do I handle that? I can't reconcile.
What I did, the answer is yes. I started with local law 10, and I'm trying to pull it up now. But if you look at local law 10, the town board had a very specific set of findings and allocations of the parking. It allocated the parking by site. If you give me a moment, I'll pull up. My trustee colleague here has pulled it up. It was what do you want? The chart that the town board had in local law 10 where they allocated the parking. They had 4 or 5 different uses of parking allocations there, and so that's a specific finding that they had regarding the project. So
the town board, as opposed to the town code.
Town board, and again, we said this in the beginning, but this is where rubber's going to meet the road. Local law 10 is the legislation that controls this, because anything in local law 10 that's inconsistent, local law 10 is a town board enacted local law. So it's at the same level of dignity, so to speak, as the rest of the town code, which is codified local law. But local law 10 is specific to this project. It's specifically found, they have looked at seeker, they've looked at the law, and they've essentially legislated what the rules are for this project. So if there's no inconsistency, you can certainly still use the code, including the EEOD code. But if there's inconsistency, local law 10 is the law. Okay? So that's the starting, that was my starting point. And again, we're trying to find that table, but there's a table that specifically allocates the parking. And what I did was I started with that, and then I just subtracted out two elements of that. One completely was for the gallery, because that is being full. That was, I believe, four spaces. And what I did was there's a proportional allocation for the office space parking.
They changed the.
They reduced the square footage that they were going to be using by approximately 20%. I could go back.
Would you like Alan to comment on it?
Let me just finish the thought. So they reduced it by a certain amount. That came out to 2 parking spaces. So what we did was we reduced the 63 that the town board required to 57, based on, again, local law 10. We could go through the exercise of going back and comparing it to the code, but local law 10 is legislation that is like, again, at the same level of dignity as the code. So that's where we were at in terms of the calculation of the number of parking spaces. Then we observed that the town board found that there was a requirement for 6 off-site parking spaces because they needed 63, and there was only going to be 57 on site. We then, by the way, everything I'm saying is up to you guys. This is a draft for you. You could take it and change it or do what you want with it. But the finding that I'm suggesting is that because we only need 57, because they've reduced the amount of office space and they've taken away the gallery, the more common thing to do would be to have 57 on site, which was originally allocated, and to get rid of the off-site requirement. Now, so that's the logic there. Now, again, I want to go back to the other piece of logic, which is that we have to be careful about just reducing things here. We would do that in a typical, suburban development. Smaller is better, less impactful. But we got to be careful as we start pulling things out of this. Are we going to be reducing the benefit of the project? Are we reducing the purpose of the project that the town board saw? So we've got to evaluate whether taking out the gallery, taking out the off-site parking, and reducing the size of the office space is in some way altering the project to the point where the town board was approving. My judgment, my suggestion was that it is not, but certainly you want to think about the gallery, for example. The gallery in a different context, and perhaps even in this context, could be seen as essential to the project. My guess is I don't think it is. I agree. But and I didn't. By the way, I looked at local law 10 and the neg deck to see if there was any comment about that, about whether how much they were focusing on the gallery. And I also looked at it to see whether their requirement for off-site parking was because they wanted to see off-site parking, or they just needed to come up with another 6 spaces, which under this proposal is no longer needed. So that's basically the logic. If you give me a moment, I'll try to pull up, and Dave's already looking, try to pull up.
While you're doing that, just have a question for the applicants. Anybody can meet.
It goes in the-
Understand. Why would you care if we said, hey, we want 20 spots on the offsite? Why would you care? Well, it almost seems like you don't want to deal with the 6 spots on the offsite area. In one of your other projects, you have offsite parking, and that's what made that thing fly. So what happens to the 6? The gallery sounded like a good idea. Why didn't you?
Because of parking, maybe to the post office.
But do it, so what? It's across the street.
Well, no, the parking is behind the firehouse, so
Yeah, I know where it is.
the distance from there to there is not
When
self-contained.
you go to New York City and you go to a restaurant, you think you park in front of a restaurant. I mean, maybe-
Thankfully, we're not in New York City.
Yeah, it might be a bad example, but so you what? Get some extra.
Hang on, Rick.
We found the provisions of the town code, not town code, local law 10. I want to read them to you so you're aware of what we're talking about. If you want to come up with a different interpretation, now that's your prerogative. I'm going to start reading in finding 57, okay, which is on page 13. It says, the applicant proposes 63 spaces detailed as follows. In 19 spaces, restaurant 25 spaces, retail bike shop 5 spaces, office co-work 10 spaces, gallery 4 spaces, and finding 58. The application proposes 57 on-site parking spaces with gravel surface. This was increased from the original proposed under review request by the town board. 59, the application proposes utilizing 6 spaces at the nearby town municipal public parking. 60, the town board finds that a need exists for the 6 off-site spaces. Should the town provide spaces in the municipal public parking lot, an agreement would be required, etc. The town board notes that they are open to consideration of such discussion and potential contract. 61, the application proposes 3 ADA accessible parking spaces, with 1 being van accessible. 62, the town board finds that this satisfies ADA statute requirements. 63, the town board finds that the proposed calculations and number of parking spaces of 63 will be the required number of spaces, which is in general conformance with section 140-17 of the town zoning. So that is the section of findings from 57 to 63 that I used as the basis for this set of determination. So the ball's in your court as to whether what we're doing is consistent.
That satisfies me.
It's not the same numbers. We're doing something a little bit different. The question is, are what we're suggesting to do different consistent with the local
So
law?
I'd just like to hear from the applicant.
So Alan, do you want to give us a narrative quickly as to when you reduced your parking, when you reduced your size of your footprint, how that reduced the parking, or Mike, maybe?
So, just want to say really, we did originally ask for 20 spots with the town board, and they asked us to ask for less. We originally had fewer parking spots on our plan to leave more green space. And then we reduced it to 6. As the project's gotten smaller, it's been difficult to come to, an agreement about
Between you and the town board.
using the municipal lot at all. And, we've been doing this for 3 years. We just wanted to move forward. So.
That's unfortunate. of course.
Well, I'll just note that
But
the
if
town board
excuse me,
vote,
if somebody uses that park. So
It's a municipal lot. I don't know.
the town board local law from last year left to the planning board clearly the layout and requirement of ADA spaces. The charging stations and how they relate to the parking lot, and how to demarcate or mark spaces on a gravel lot, which we discussed at the last meeting, right? Our collective position for the board's consideration is that local law set the number of spaces required.
You mentioned charging stations. I don't see charging stations in here.
Yeah, so-
I'm sorry, I missed.
We discussed that in a previous meeting about the request from the planning board to the applicant for EV chargers. Have you guys come up with a final determination on that? I know you discussed that you would wire them and then identify if there was a need later. Is that still where you stand?
We will still be putting them in, but we put in as part of when we get the MEP, mechanical electrical plumbing design for the actual facility.
Of course.
When we would do the layout, we can show where we're putting them, whether it's 2, 3, 4, whatever
Sure.
spots. So applicant will choose how many base spots they want to do. Design the site. It's just like the final architectural design of every little detail inside the building. Same thing goes to the MEP design. It's not done at this point in the process. Basically, we're trying to do the planning board approval, and we'll address those items when it comes to actual, which I say construction documents.
Sure. So we don't require them. We request them. We encourage them. We would like to see them. So that, in our decision under number 7, since we're on it right now, the last line in 7 says the planning board has addressed the inclusion of EV charging stations on this site plan. Would you agree that I could change that to say the planning board, the applicant has accepted the inclusion of EV charging stations on the site?
Rick, we would like to do it, but I've never, tried to work with ChargePoint before as a vendor. So if something weird comes up, I've also tried to do things with solar and Central Hudson and shut it down. So we will make every effort. It's in the spirit of the project, but if it's like a condition of approval, and if we can't figure out how to do it, somehow we're breaking the law, I prefer not to go down that path, but we will make every effort to do it because it totally makes sense.
Can you do the homework now? And present this to the planning board rather than leave it kind of determined.
I think you just said he doesn't want to do this. Because.
Because of
The possibility of them not.
Right, and we don't require, it's not a requirement in town code, but we do encourage.
So Henry's has been very reasonable with everything. I believe. So if we can do it, I think we need to indicate that the applicant exhibited a desire to do it.
How about we change this to the planning board has encouraged the inclusion of EV charging stations on the site plan rather than addressed. Is that adequate?
That's great.
And then the design team's MEP plan will include that, and then we'll then have something go.
Right.
to
We're gonna
a-
have 4, we're gonna have 6, we're gonna have 2. This is how many will fit.
We're gonna have something.
Right, you're gonna have to go to a third party and say, we want 2 of them, what's that process? It's, I can't even imagine what that.
Sure, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, okay, so we're gonna change that has encouraged. Rick, you with me? Encouraged.
Yeah, and Mark.
Yep,
So the counties previously recommended in these kind of circumstances, just some statement that the utilities will go in.
Right.
To be EV charger ready.
that would require you to
Run the line.
to run on, plumb them, and then whether you hook them up or not. Yeah. Okay, all right, great. You guys are all good? Here we go. Number 8, emergency services. The planning board coordinates its review. Excellent, let me go back. Rick, you're good with Mr. Gordon on local law 10, moving on? Okay. Emergency services. The planning board coordinated its review with the emergency services center, notably by the Ackwood Fire Department. Number 9, noise.
We're happy with what has been decided. We coordinated.
There's a letter in the file. We
Just
we could note the letter in the file.
For clarity, local law 10 said you had to coordinate with the department. That's what Mr. Gordon's attempted to
And
say,
that's all we have to say.
is the coordination happened.
Moving on. Number 9, noise. The project complies with the requirements of local law 10 and the town code pertaining to the generation of noise. Local law 10 and the code set forth specific noise abatement requirements for this project, and local law 10 directs that they be mandated as conditions of the site plan approval, which is otherwise implied from the planning board's authority under the code. Pursuant to local law 10, the planning board reviewed the potential noise impacts accordingly to the standards of 140-20F1, and this approval includes conditions as follows: ensure compliance with those standards. Specifically, the following conditions are met to attenuate or mitigate any potential noise impacts to ensure that any outdoor amplified sound increases the volume at the site's property lines by no more than, it says 10 decibels, which we discussed 5, so that should say 5. You
No.
want me to keep going?
Leave it at 10 and then
Okay.
we get to the 5.
Oh,
next
Okay, you're
floor.
citing code, thank you. 10 decibels, and that any increase in volume 5 to 10 decibels above the ambient noise level is attenuated or mitigated to the maximum degree practical.
I just want to be clear on this, Mark, so everybody's aware. The town board, local law 10, they only discussed the 10 decibel requirement. And if you recall the last meeting, I was fairly clear saying that the code also has a requirement if it's above 5 that we reduce it down there.
Right.
So so to the extent that we get involved in the 5 to 10, that is a function of our ability and requirement to enforce the code. Local law 10 is silent on that. And one way to possibly interpret it is that silence indicates that local law 10 was only about 10 decibels. I did not think that that was correct, and I understood that the board wanted to move toward the 5, so we put it in there. But I just want everybody to be aware that that was the determination that was made at that point, and that's why the sentence is written that way. When we go to the 5, when we ask them to reduce down to 5, essentially, we are directly utilizing the code, whereas the maximum of 10 is in both the code and local law.
Great. Indoor and outdoor dining, events, gathering parties, and other uses of the site shall not generate cumulative sound levels at or beyond any lot line that exceeds the ambient noise level by 10 or more decibels in compliance with Town of Rochester zoning code, section 140-20. Further, any sound of 5 to 10 decibels above the ambient noise level shall be attenuated or mitigated to the maximum degree possible. Practical. These are statutory requirements which are enforceable at law by the Town of Rochester. B, additional noise mitigation measures will be undertaken as follows. Speakers will be set up for indoor and outdoor dining upon completion of the granary site and project. Sound will be tested along the perimeter of site to determine which location on perimeter has the largest difference between ambient noise levels and noise levels with music on. Levels on the main amplifier will be tested to determine that amount of amplification raises the most sensitive point on the perimeter by 10 dBA. Once locations are set and levels are discovered, a sound limiter will be installed on the sound system to limit overall amplification to 10 dBA or less as required by town code with a unit such as the Atlas Sound TSD-ALC2 audio level controller and limiter.
That's where you lose
Okay,
me.
here's
Why
the
wouldn't
five.
why wouldn't that say fine?
I agree. Why wouldn't we voted to say 5, not 5 to 10?
Okay, this language that Mark just read is directly out of local law 10.
Right, so we put, as our purview allows, we put additional restrictions based on the public comment that came in from neighbors stating that they didn't want any at all. We voted that 5 would be the maximum, not 10. So in my opinion, we should change that language, and you're gonna have to help me here a second, but change that to where it says of 5 to 10, it should say of 0 to 5. Does everybody agree with that? I'll read it again.
No, but he's referring to court, so.
But I suggest we keep them both because the 5 is the maximum extent practical.
Correct.
So 10 is an absolute.
10 is not on the table.
But if, for example, just to throw,
Sure.
if it was really, really hard or impossible to get below 6, that would ultimately be the functional requirement.
In my opinion, if they couldn't get to 6, they need to turn the music off.
Okay?
In my opinion, 5 is the max, and if they can't get to it, then there isn't any.
Okay,
So I'm speaking for myself. I don't,
You guys said fine.
that, we voted to 5, so,
right.
so do you wanna,
And change it to 5.
okay, so I'm gonna read that again. Here we go. I'm on letter A. Are you with me?
I was on actually A4.
Yeah.
I was on B4.
B4, okay.
That's the-
Once okay, you're right. Once locations are set and levels are discovered, a sound limiter will be installed on sound systems to limit overall amplification to 5 or less as required by town code with a unit such as Atlas Sound TSD-ALC2, audio level controller and limiter.
And I think it's a practical matter, since we're talking about an amplifier.
Right.
It can always be turned down to.
Exactly.
6 to 5, right?
And if for some reason ambient noise level at the corner of Towpath and Granite is at 7 and the music is on, well, you need to get the number to 5, so you might have to turn the music off to do something.
But you're talking about increase. They're going to increase 5, so I did 7, they have a right to increase to 12.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
I want to take, I think it's the right place to discuss it. It should say something about ambient noise measurements.
Ambient noise study.
Yeah, by whom and when.
Okay, I believe we did a mitigation measure somewhere else, but I don't recall if it's on this number or not. Let's keep going, Zorian, and before we go to the next number, we'll go there. I'm on C. All the foregoing will be coordinated with the town of Rochester code enforcement
Well,
officer.
let me, one more thing. What we're doing here is going through the board's findings. Ultimately, anything of importance, like the stuff we're doing here, should also be
Yeah.
reflected in the condition.
Right.
They're gonna be separate sections, so this is more of a narrative to explain what we're doing, but if it's important, keep it in your mind, we'll get to it on the condition as well.
So Zorian, write that down and we'll make sure we have it.
I
before we
think I
go.
read it at the end.
Okay, good.
I didn't see anything.
All the foregoing will be coordinated with the town of Rochester code enforcement officer, the confirmation of correct methodology, procedure, and interpretation of resultant noise information is fully observed. D, outdoor amplified music will cease by 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, as well as 9 p.m. on Sunday through Thursday. To further mitigate of noise as well as visual impact, the project shall include applicable landscaping per the landscaping plan dated 2/2/24. I think we have a new landscaping
Yeah.
plan since then, which is the reflective date of when we added to those extra trees that we asked for. What was that date of that plan? Alan, we're gonna come back to you while you find it, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Mitigation measure B4 in particular is designated and expected to ensure compliance with the 10 dBA increase, which is now says 5 dBA increase in code 140-20.
Outside of the code, so we can do.
Yeah. 10, the landscaping. The planning board has reviewed the project's proposed landscaping and final provisions are part of the site plan. Noise and visual impact will be further mitigated by applicable landscape for the landscaping plan that is required as a condition of approval. Board, we have not talked about a bond for landscaping as we are allowed in code. So we potentially will get to that as the conditions of approval. Just keep that in the background. 11, exterior lighting. Exterior lighting details were provided and reviewed by the planning board and are comply. And we need to get rid of the word are, and comply with code section 140-28. Exterior lighting is shielded and focused downward to prevent glare and spillover of light onto adjoining properties. 12, a full signage detail plan was provided and reviewed by the planning board and is part of the site plan. The signage plan compiles with the requirements of code 140-21. 13, Rail trail and bicycling access. The planning board finds that the potential development of the O&W rail corridor through the town would provide a substantial local and regional recreational and transportation resource, and that the existing portion of the site corridor through the site therefore has substantial and unique potential community value. The board also finds that the development of this corridor has not been fully settled or planned and is subject to future negotiations among the applicant, including its successors, and the town and county, among others. The board also acknowledges the Ulster County Planning Board's imposition of a required modification for a public access easement over the proposed rail trail highway, walkway path to be incorporated into the final site plan approval. The board presumes that this requirement represents Ulster County Planning Board's determination that the rail trail is an important regional linear recreational and transportation resource and concurs with that determination. Finally, the board acknowledges that in the negative declaration, the town board did not find a potential significant adverse environmental impact on the rail trail, but also recognized the potential that it would consider as expansion of the rail trail through the granary site in the future. The board finds that the incompleteness of negotiations to provide for development of the rail trail through the site would render premature and improvident any conditions to this approval that would require such development, and the board recognizes the applicant has argued that such conditions would be illegal. For the foregoing reasons, that the planning board also finds the Ulster County Planning Board's required modification for an access easement along the trail to be incomplete and improvident, although the board recognizes that the effect of the Ulster County Planning Board requirement nonetheless for a vote of a majority +1 to approve the site plan. Accordingly, while this approval will not require the applicant to develop or accede to the development of the corridor as an active trail, the board finds that the preservation of the potential for such active recreation or access is manifestly in the public interest, and the approval shall be considered thereon. Bicycle.
So the condition here is going to be that the corridor be preserved, that they don't build anything on it, but we're not going to require any dedication or any easement or anything like that.
Yeah, we agreed on that.
Which we've had, we've had an exchange of views on that, but we're going to require for the site plan approval if they're not building.
So they can't provide any kind of encumbrance that will prevent the possible development.
Correct.
Mark, I just want to know, just from my point of view, I'll leave it to the applicants too. I think that condition is the same thing as requiring the access. I don't think it's legal. I don't think that this board has the authority to say that we will, something's manifestly important and that we should keep it open.
Right.
No matter what.
Well, you made the argument very clear in the papers that you submitted that you viewed this as an exaction. An exaction is essentially a donation of real property, including an easement, which is an interest in real property. We are specifically avoiding the donation of real property. We're simply requiring preservation, which you guys, I thought you said you were interested in those further negotiations. So it requires keeping that clear.
Well,
But we're not exacting any real
I don't want
property.
to get too much. I mean, the Nolan test says that even if you create an easement for the public good, and it's not technically an exaction under Coons or whatever authority you want in the Supreme Court, you're still requiring that person to.
But we're not creating an easement. That's the point. There's no easement.
We're
required.
not.
Why don't we do this?
But it's requiring it to be kept open.
Why don't we do this?
Effective.
And the applicant has the opportunity, if we put this in the condition, I agree with the way you described it. The applicant has the possibility of suing us to get it out of that desk. Go over to the Supreme Court. You guys could be out this for the.
I would suggest looking at it differently.
Yeah.
If the applicant gets to a point, I mean, they haven't done it so far, but if the applicant gets to a point where some reason or other they need to develop
They would come back.
They have to come back.
I mean, it's not a permanent thing. It's a condition now, but if something happens, you have a new building you want to build and these negotiations are dead and not going anywhere, or there's an alternative for the trail, you can come back and we can modify the site
Right,
plan. This states the present conditions, and it can always be modified. That's what it comes down to, but it's just conditions going forward as of now.
And we'd have to come back to you anyway.
You would. Right. That's right. There's nothing, no, it's not locked in stone. It's setting the present understanding. So the negotiations can go forward. If they fall apart completely and if there's an alternative.
This protects the town that says, we want it to go through, the county wants to go, everybody wants to go through. If it can go, as do you, if we can get to a common ground, it's gonna go through. If not, you gotta come back to
And
us if
that's
you want
the
to do
critical
something.
difference with an exaction. If we were taking a property, including an easement, that's permanent. That there's no going back from that. That's a given. So this leaves it up in the air, preserves the status quo. But we make, that's
Yeah, I don't
a proposal now for the board.
I don't want that to denigrate any of the legal arguments.
Okay.
applicant's attorney. They don't do the right thing by protecting is the applicant and our attorneys doing the right thing by protecting the right that we seem to want to act.
I didn't disagree with you. The exact same problem is that there's a big problem when you require the donation of property, but we are not doing that. We're maintaining status quo.
My clients are good with this.
We got a long way to go, so let's keep going. Bicycle racks to facility access to the site by bicycle are included in the site. Moving on, number 14, walkways. The planning board has reviewed the walkways and other site plan features located, and after review finds that they efficiently move people from parking to buildings and from buildings to other buildings, including ADA compliance. Lot consolidation. The applicant has made application to the code enforcement officer for lot improvement according to chapter 125 of the Town of Rochester Code to merge the 5 lots into one. The planning board has approved the same. Remember, that has already been filed with the county and back, so that is all set. Special conditions of
Okay, so the
approval.
conditions is where the whole narrative that we just read gets put into the legally enforceable stuff, so everybody keep their eyes open in case there's a typo.
Here we go. Nothing herein shall be construed to approve or permit the project as a commercial event facility within the meaning of the town zoning code or approve events as a use on the site. I think we beat that up, applicant, right? We're not gonna do any of that. Moving on. Nothing in this approval shall be construed to permit the construction of any structure or fixture that would interfere with or render impossible the future extension of the O&D regional trail through the portion of such site on the rail trail, on the site. The project shall preserve viability for such potential extension of the trail. Indoor and outdoor dining, events, gathering, parties, and other uses of the site shall not generate cumulative sound levels at or beyond any lot line that exceed the ambient noise level by 5 or more decibels in compliance with the Town of Rochester Town Zoning Code 140-20. Further, any sound of in compliance with the Town of Rochester Planning Board findings. You got that?
Yeah, but let's not replace it. I want to keep this in compliance with the code.
Because that's the code that wants you to do that.
I don't care what the code says because 5 to 10 is not something we agreed on. We agreed on 0 to 5.
What do you mean?
The code says 140-20 says they have to attenuate sound anything over 5 and up to 10.
Down to 5,
Down to 5.
right,
We want it to be a maximum of 5.
but those are the same things.
No,
Not in my opinion.
Well, only, if you take out the word, it says, the code says from down to 5, as long as it's,
Mitigated and attenuated?
no, as long as practical.
Oh,
If you take out the word practical, they're the same thing. The code would say down to 5, you're saying down to 5. In fact, I would suggest that the board stick very closely to that, because as I said, we don't have seeker authority here.
I see.
We have, the only 2 sources of authority are seeker, which we don't have, and the code, which we do. So if the code says down to 5.
But we have the ability as the
practical-
planning board to have a more stringent
No, you don't.
restriction.
No, you can't require, you think you do, because you usually have seeker authority, you can make findings that it would be.
no, but the town board gives us authority to come up with.
To mitigate A higher level of noise.
Town board gives us.
The town board only mentions 10.
No, but at the same time, they give authority to mitigate the noise.
Right.
Down to 10.
No, what Zorian's saying is that we have the ability to put additional measures on top of current town code by authority from the town board
Well, okay.
in the EEO.
Oh, it's part of the.
Part of the
code?
EEO, they said that we have the ability to
Okay.
do site plan review, but in addition to that, we can have more stringent requirements on top of
Okay.
current town code. This board voted on 5, this public is here, we agreed to that, and I want to stick to it.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Code, Mark, the code says you have to attenuate or mitigate, between
5 and 10, I want to
You want to
mitigate,
go beyond that. So the point, I think, is,
I want to mitigate and
What does-
attenuate from 0 to 5.
I think Zorian's, if I interpret it correctly, he's just trying to get the language correct of what the code says versus what this board's choosing to do. The code talks about
First talk about
above
maximum
10 and
10,
between 5 and 10.
But
We're
you're
talking
saying
140,
5,
one,
you
yeah.
have to mention that.
Right.
I want to change 10 to 5 and 5 to 0. Is that what you're on the same page?
25?
So they want to allow up to
Right,
10,
right,
make it
okay.
5. And then where it says 5, make it 0.
Right, but what I'm trying to say, if you put the code here, it implies that this is core,
Right,
according to code.
right.
Should
We have
say-
additional
we
on
should-
top of that.
Should say that the decision of the planning board and the permit was given, or authority given to us by town board.
So Dave, how about we add on number 3? Right. Number 3, it says indoor and outdoor dining events, gathering parties, and other shall site plan not generate cumulative sound levels at or beyond any lot line that exceeds the ambient noise level by 10 or more decibels in compliance with Town of Rochester zoning code 140-20. Further, the local planning board added additional mitigation measures to not exceed ambient noise by more than 5.
The authority given to us.
So that's also there, that's right, that's within the code,
Does
because
somebody have that? You have that?
I don't.
That's okay. So right after 140-20, it should say the local planning board added additional mitigation measures to
By limiting.
Can I make a suggestion on this? So right now, we're looking at the conditions, so it doesn't really matter where it came. These are the conditions that the applicant needs to follow. So we don't need a lot of explanation of who added it, or anything like that. They have to get down to 5, just put it in the,
Okay, I agree. Get rid of the 10 and make it 5.
well, get rid of the reference to the planning board. These are the conditions the planning board is imposing, but they're the conditions. So you stay above, you don't go above 5.
In reference to town. board.
So don't even reference town code, just say 5.
Yeah, and
Okay.
then, again,
I'll
we have-
need you guys to coordinate to write that language.
and we have, remember, the explanations that we're talking about heard before with our findings.
Agreed.
These are the conditions. These should be very simple so they understand.
Okay.
It's 5.
So then, so Zorian, we're gonna get rid of 10 and the reference to town code. And we're going to make that once ambient is set, they cannot exceed 5 decibels above that set number.
Yeah.
End of discussion. Okay, noise?
So Mark.
Yep.
0 to 5 requires mitigation or does, the way it reads now?
No,
No.
Further, okay.
just up to 5, no
You're
mitigation.
mitigating down to 5.
Yep, I just want to make sure. Also.
So basically, Mike, just make sure, I want to put this on the record. If your sound level comes in at 83, okay, because you're doing your sound test and your number's 83. At 89, we got a problem. 88, you're fine, okay? I think we're all set.
One question though is, as far as just clarification, it says shall not generate cumulative sound levels, should be amplified sound.
Correct, yes. Thank you.
All right, so we covered right now the ambient.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
So this is where we're going to talk about the ambient noise being set, Dave, okay? This is where we're gonna add where the ambient noise has to be set once construction's complete.
Yeah.
Is that a good time to do that now in this spot? 3, we're at the end of 3.
What do you want to say again?
So we want to add after 3 that the sound study to determine ambient noise level will be completed at the end of the construction period.
It's in, look, it's.
It's
all
in
that-
that number.
You already have it?
Number 4 is the whole, same layout that we had
Okay,
before.
we have it, Zoran. Here we go. Number 4, additional,
Hey, I'm
Yep.
sorry, Mark.
it's okay.
Also in where it says further any sound, it probably should say further any amplifies.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Where are you, Mike?
These are the lists.
And number 3, the
Number 3,
last
second.
Yes, thank you. Further any amplify.
While we're at it, number 2, it's O and W, we have shown that on D.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I do that.
Okay.
Those, I should
D-
say Ren's OCD.
Listen, D and W is the pinky, like swimming over there on the left side on the keyboard. Okay,
Mark, I was sorry, this question.
Sure.
I know we're talking about amplified sound, but if they have an acoustic band that's playing and they're loud and they're not amplified, does this apply to them as well?
yeah, they can't have any,
I'm just asking, I
Sure.
want to make sure.
Good
it's
question. So,
legally-
in my opinion, based on the board's conversation,
Right.
any noise that exceeds 5 decibels has to be mitigated.
Okay.
Down
Wait.
to 5.
But a lawnmower is gonna be like 20, can we say outdoor music?
That's
No,
what I'm-
you're gonna set a sound study.
Yeah,
Whatever that number comes back at, you can't be 5 over, just as similar to Crested Hen, the racetrack, all the other ones that we have. Any outdoor things that are occurring. Normally, the limit is 10, we're setting this at 5.
But their point is a lawnmower in certain
Lawnmower
cases
is-
would exceed that decibel level.
I see, so you're saying it would be over the ambient level,
It's also not, it's not amplified.
but it's
I'm not
not
talking
in.
about, I'm talking about acoustic music outside, we keep talking about amplified.
Well, I think we need to define noise generated by the establishment better, whether you refute.
Well, I think the applicant's proposal was to only have applicants, I'm talking to you here. I think the applicant's proposal only included speakers that would not exceed 5 decibels above ambient. So anything that was occurring with the word noise should not exceed 5. Is that where you're going?
I'm just saying. as a
Except maintenance
musician,
activity.
Except,
Sometimes
activity.
acoustic music can get very loud.
Sure.
I'm just saying, it's up to protect neighbors.
Well,
That's all I'm saying.
First of all, very often acoustic music is actually amplified, it's just you're playing an acoustic guitar. I would also point out that, again, the code says from 5 to 10, it gets reduced to 5 to the extent practical.
Right.
We've made a finding in order to nail down 5, that it's always practical to turn the amplifier.
Right.
If the sound is being generated by other than an amplifier, whether it's somebody singing with a guitar or a lawnmower, it may not be similarly practical to turn it down as it would just a dial on an amp. So I want you to, I'm
That
not
makes
saying
sense.
this, I want you to think about it.
Sure.
Can you, do we want to make them get a quieter lawnmower?
Yeah.
Um,
Have
Well,
one-
but I'm not talking about
Anyway,
lawnmower, I'm just talking about outdoor
Understand,
music.
sure. Do we,
Talking about amplification.
You want to make them
Not
play?
But
Sure, if it's specific to outdoor music, then that was a discussion, but I just don't know where the restrictions they
Right.
apply here. What if someone's clapping or someone's cheering? because they
Right.
saw
I think that
soccer
anything
game
in
or
regarding
something.
to outdoor music should be within that 5 parameter. That satisfies your neighbors, that anything noise related that you're generating,
Right,
that you're manufacturing,
okay.
should be at 5 or less.
Right, but it needs to be worded so that if they have a wedding and.
Well, they're not having a wedding,
Well,
but I'm with you.
then if there's a bachelor party at the
Sure.
bar,
There-
and they come in and the people are hooting and hollering or cheering or whatever they're
Sure.
doing, they shouldn't be held culpable for that.
No, of course not, I'm just talking about acoustic music.
Right, no, I'm just saying.
No, it's great.
I was just asking a question.
It's a good question.
You know, it's-
I was just gonna suggest that the weddings and, receptions are allowed within the interior. of-
Inside, sure. Yes. Do we need to rewrite anything? Do you want to add paint?
Outdoor music.
Take
I
away?
think covers-
No.
I think outdoor music covers the whole blank.
So-
Yeah.
Children.
Do we want to go back to number 3? Or do we feel good?
I think music needs to be added in that conversation.
Okay. I think it should say amplified outdoor music.
Or amplified music, because if it gets really loud inside and it spills over to outside, then you have the neighbors complaining about that too.
That makes sense. So how about we just go indoor and outdoor dining, events, gathering parties, and other uses of the site shall not generate amplified music sound levels at or beyond any lot line that exceeds the ambient noise level by 5 or more decibels in compliance with the Town of Rochester Planning Board findings. Further, any amplified music of, did we scratch that?
Right, because you've
We
already.
started to change it, we stopped, so, right.
You've already imposed the more stringent parameter.
Right. Okay, so then I'm moving on to number 4. Sorry, and here comes your sound study.
Okay.
Additional noise mitigation measures will be undertaken as follows. Speakers will be set up for indoor and outdoor dining upon completion of the granary site and project. Sound will be tested along the perimeter of site to determine which location on perimeter has the largest difference between ambient noise level and noise levels of the music on. Levels on the main amplifier will be tested to determine what amount of amplification raises the most sensitive point on the perimeter by 5 dBA. Once locations are set and levels are discovered, a sound limiter will be installed on the sound system to limit overall amplification to 5 or less as required by town code with a unit such as the Atlas Sound A TSDA LC2 audio level controller and limiter.
Okay. You're done?
I don't think that's good enough. Because we need to add here where we take that sound findings, we report it to the town clerk. It's done on an annual basis.
That part, but I'm talking about ambient. We need to say when and by whom. Because-
Baseline.
I'm sorry?
For the baseline.
Yeah.
Okay. So determining, so letter E. You guys should be right, hopefully we're writing this.
Because,
A determination of ambient noise levels will be completed
construction of main
upon final construction,
main buildings. Before operation start.
right, upon final construction of all approved site plan items
And
and
conducting-
before operation. And conducted,
by outside consultant.
yep, and conducted by outside consultants and submitted to the town clerk.
From clerk or code enforcement. of-
Both.
CEO.
Town, it goes to the town clerk for filing and they distribute to the CEO. Is how we do it on the other ones, but we can add town clerk and CEO. How's that? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. We're fine.
Uniform for every applicant. Because we-
Yep, exactly. Mark.
And
Go ahead, Cindy.
I was going to ask, is there the capability for them as things change and mature? Because obviously the plans increase that you're putting our copious on this site. And as time goes on, they grow up and that changes how ambient is measured on the border.
No, it's not correct, I'm sorry. Ambient is whatever on the border, whatever is going on inside is not relevant. An ambient as far as a neighbor concerned, he lives to that neighbor, to that property, and they have ambient at this particular moment. They're gonna add trees, it's not gonna change, the ambient is there.
So you're saying, Cindy, that because the trees are gonna grow up, they should redo a noise level? Is that what you're proposing?
Not that they should have to, but that they should be afforded the possible opportunity to do
To
so.
reset ambient.
To reset ambient after 2 years with mature shrubberies and stuff.
What, okay. We're talking about conducting ambient when there is no activity.
Sure.
On the property.
Right.
So.
And the construction is completed.
Right, so you put the trees, you don't put the tree, no activities. What Cindy is referring is, you start some activities, now you put the tree, so your noise going to the ambient is reduced. But it is completely different condition. Completely different
I see both
situation.
sides. Sure, I get it.
But ambient meant over time. Right now, ambient, there is nothing related to the permit, to the activity.
Sure. Here it is. It's 72,
Right.
whatever it is.
And the trees.
How do you
no
guys feel about
trees,
that? Or
it's-
Christian?
Regarding the outside consultant, who selects them to pay?
It's the applicant's responsibility to pay them, and it's their responsibility to find a third-party agency that will be submitted to the town, to the planning board for review, and then submitted to the town clerk for filing.
That needed to be.
We've had, an array of different, some people out of Paramus, we get them from all over.
I mean, I'll just point out the code in, whatever it is, 14020
F1.
F, 2 tells you have to use the assessing and mitigating noise impacts policy of New York State DEC, which talks about all this stuff. And if the practical matter is, it's your code enforcement officers that deal with this. They're gonna look at the code and say, I gotta go look at that policy published by New York State
Sure.
on how to do this.
So you think that we're,
So the question is, I guess, do you want to go above and beyond that? Is that what you're trying?
I don't think so,
I
no.
don't think so.
And that allows you.
So you want us just to quote it
That
as,
allows you to remeasure ambient. What, for argument's sake, say if your successors approve a music venue at the train station.
Right.
The ambient noise level in neighborhoods change. They would have a legitimate cause for coming back to argue there's a change of conditions. And that policy
But
published
at
by the
that
state.
point, it's gonna be discussed. At that point, we cannot just kind of general assumption, okay, it's gonna change there, gonna change there. At that
Well-
point, they will come and say, hey, there is an ambient noise, we're not generating that.
Correct.
But
Well,
also,
It will go to the code enforcement.
Yes, you have to.
but hang on a second, Zorian, because
You cannot
also in
predict
other
all those
applications, in other applications, Crested Hen, Eckerd Speedway, and I believe Arrowwood, they set ambient every year. And they pay for that and they submit it to.
And this is why.
I'm not aware of it. Arrowwood doesn't do it every year.
I know,
They've done
I know the Speedway did, we had it in front of us.
Well, Speedway, they're not doing anything. Whatever.
No, they're setting ambient. Every year, they have, they pay for it to be done and then it goes to the clerk to be filed.
I just go.
I don't, it doesn't matter either way to me, I'm on, I don't,
I just see, I understand it with simple way. If you conduct ambient.
what does the DEC say?
We have to pull it up.
Okay, we'll come back, so give me a
It's a
couple minutes.
multiple page.
Yeah, the DEC guidance is for much more
Very
complicated, I mean, I asked Alina, she worked with it for 20 years, right? I mean, when you do like a mine, for example, there's.
I guess my question is does the board okay with asking Helena for input on how ambient is set?
The question on the table was, do we want to use the language of the code, which has been set? Yeah, my opinion is yes. The code suggests you use the DEC, whatever section.
But that doesn't explain about how ambient is being set annually.
No, but that's,
Yep.
if you were to choose to set it annually, that would be going to public,
Okay,
which
So,
is,
yes.
which I defer to David, is your prerogative.
sure. I don't think we need to be in addition to
What are we
DEC.
trying, what are we trying to do?
My
Well,
point-
question.
Zorian is asking that, Zorian is asking that ambient be set after construction.
I know
Cindy is saying it can be done more often. It doesn't have to just be set.
Because.
What are we trying to do?
We don't have a.
I mean, what-
My thought on this was because we're setting, I hesitate to say a punitive DBA, but a very.
You
low
want, your
DBA,
goal is to make this flexible.
That I think in order to be fair to the applicant, that they should be allowed to do like the racetrack does and measure their ambient level if they so choose to undertake that cost every year as their shrubberies and trees and everything.
And I'm fine with
Now, I would suggest that if we did nothing regarding the suggestion, that possibility would still be on the table, because they could always come in for a site plan, right? If
They
they go.
could,
if
but
they-
again, that is,
More time and
that's more
cost.
paperwork and more
Okay.
time than
So you
more
want-
BS.
So what provision would you like, just give them the permission upon?
Similar to other applications that are approved.
Similar to the racetrack, that they don't have to measure it every year if they don't want to. But if they say, you know, guys, our shrubs are really good and our business is doing well and let's spring the
So
money.
what, so we do, so you're suggesting that any time in the future, but no more than perhaps once a year, they have the authority to submit. a
They have
revised,
the ability to submit that, yes.
I agree with that.
I don't have a concern with that.
That's, so that's
I
what's on
think
the
it's
table.
reasonable.
We want to vote on that?
Front of the planning board.
Say again?
That gets good, right, code.
That would
Okay.
go.
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
so
so
that-
wait. Who do you want to have authority to review that? The
person
CEO?
that Has the authority now.
Right, so that document in other applications is paid for by the applicant.
Yep.
Is submitted to the town clerk for the record and then sent to the code enforcement officer for enforcement. So for instance, if your ambient this year is 80, you can go up to 85. If you so choose to pay another X amount of dollars to have a new study done, and that takes your ambient down to 77, now that's your new ambient level. So keep that in mind. That would be at your cost.
Can we just write this in a way? Or like if applicant proceeds with outdoor, it's not clear that there's any way that this will
Well,
work at five.
it would be written as a hypothetical and it's not anything that would.
Right, it would just give you the ability to do so.
Yeah, I just mean if we don't do any like Sonos at all outdoors because it's just not feasible.
Of course.
And we test it and we're like, this is
Sure.
weird. So we just don't do it. I don't want to write in there where we have to do all.
No,
these
it
tests.
would, it would be an option that you would, at the applicant's, request, they have the ability to.
Actually, I think what he is saying is that he would like to have a special condition written
I agree.
as that if they choose not to have outdoor music, that they don't have to do the ambient noise
No.
study.
No matter what, they have to set, after the construction's completed, you have to set ambient one time and be done. If you so desire, and you feel that ambient is changing or whatever the situation, neighborhood, however that is, you then have the ability to update your ambient noise of record. It would still be only allowed to be 5 from that number, but you can reset that ambient noise study on your dime, and it would come back to the code enforcement officer and town clerk. The racetrack, just for your knowledge, it is a requirement that they do a new sound study every single year to set ambient.
Don't they do it before the
They do.
Every race?
No, once a year on the determination of their, they have the
Give
ability.
another example, Guinness, in other words, they don't do any ambient.
Right.
They done it once before.
They've said it and that's it.
Application, done.
Got it.
So it has to be consistent across the board.
I'm fine with this being consistent across the board. If you want to pay for it, you can reset it. Keeping in mind, it could go down. Yep. Okay, so Dave and Jasmine, you guys are gonna have to draw something for that language. Okay. Okay,
We can beat that up and out.
moving on. Number 5,
Well, if you leave around.
it needs to be right.
You wouldn't get it up on the program.
All the foregoing will be coordinated with the Town of Rochester Code Enforcement Officer that the confirmation of correct methodology, procedure, and interpretation of resultant noise information is fully observed. Number 6, outdoor amplified music will cease by 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, as well as 9 p.m. on Sunday and Thursday. Number 7, to further mitigate noise, as well as visual impact, the project shall include a pickable landscape for the landscape plan dated, Alan? 3/18/24. Thank you. Moving on.
We'll change the reference back to the funding.
Yes, please. Number 8, we are halfway home, sorry. The project shall include 57 on-site parking spaces. This shall include 3 ADA spaces, including 1 van accessible access space. Due to restrictions to the size of the project, there is no requirement for off-site parking. 9, any and all other agency permit or approvals which are currently required or which may be in the future be determined to be required in conjunction with the construction or operation of the project shall be secured or renewed as applicable. Should any condition of such other permits conflict with any condition herein of the town code, the more restrictive conditions shall prevail. Should any permit approvals, including without limitation, Ulster County DPW, Town of Rochester Highway, Ulster County Department of Health, necessitate a change to the site plan approval, the applicant shall submit an application for modification of the same to this planning board. 10, outdoor illumination shall occur only from 1 hour prior to business opening through 1 hour after business closing. It shall remain dark during all other hours, except as necessary for safety and security. Illumination is determined by the planning board. You guys are dark sky compliant. Your landscaping engineer did a stand-up job. It's perfect. Thank
We're
you.
also at 24-hour comments.
Correct. Yep. There shall be no internally lit signage. So no backlighting of signs. We've talked about that. You have a signage plan already. We've approved it. 12, worker housing shall remain long-term housing and may not be utilized for short-term rental or as part of the inn. 13, applicant shall install all parking devices and access points as indicated on the conceptual development plan subject to local law 10, 2023. There shall be no deliveries between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. 15, on-site parking shall be in approved and designated space only. All designated parking spaces shall be maintained in safe and accessible condition, free from obstructions. There shall be no use of designated parking space for any purpose other than vehicle parking, including display or storage of products, materials, or supplies. 16, there shall be no parking or standing permitted in any public right-of-way, public road right-of-way, including vehicles making deliveries. The designated loading area shall be only location to receive deliveries. 17, a location for cyclists to safely secure their bicycles shall be established and maintained. 18, a dumpster and related enclosure shall be maintained in a safe and secure manner and shall remain inaccessible to non-employees. Landscaping as depicted on the approved landscaping plan dated, changing the date 3, Alan, 18/24, and dead or deceased planting shall be properly replaced with similar plantings. Rick, can we talk about the bond here?
Yeah, we usually, well, I'll let them come up with the number, but at least for
Right.
landscaping, it's usually like 25%.
Right, so what we do for, Mike, you'll want to look at town code on this for landscaping bond. What we require is a bond in a percentage of your proposal for your landscaping installation and purchase of those materials be set with the town clerk and the town attorney, not the planning board. Reason that is you'll submit a proposal. Alan, you'll have the landscaping engineer draw up a proposal of what it's going to cost to purchase that landscaping, install that landscaping, and maintain that landscaping. And then depending on what that number comes back is, we will send it to Christian, as he just did on DeJager, another project that we're going to be talking about later, for their bond limits. And he will approve that bond amount that's set based on code. That bond will be set at the town clerk's office, paid to the supervisor, and then it will be in place for 24 months until those trees are either in full bloom or there's something that needs to be fixed or replaced. And that item will either be coming out of your pocket to fix or replace it at the code enforcement officer's discretion, or if you fail to replace it, it will come out of that bond before it was returned. So take a look at our landscaping bond code. We do it on all of our applications. It's very consistent with skate time, the gas stations that have recently been placed, Harana Market. So take a look at that. And in addition to the Jaeger, we'll be adding the landscaping bond to this requirement, which is just code, Dave Church. We just take that code verbiage right out of the, okay. Any questions on landscaping board? Landscaping bond? Applicant, any issues with that? Moving on, here we go. In the event that any on-site trees are to be cleared in the future for development, the applicant shall observe the New York State DEC and US FWS November 1 through March 31st timeframe and all other applicable state and federal requirements for any such tree removals. Any such removals shall be specifically account for the northern long-eared bat, whose designation was changed from threatened to endangered in 2023. Here we go. General conditions. Do we need to read the general conditions, Dave? We do not. Okay. I'm on the bottom of the next page in bold. Town of Rochester Planning Board further grants the authority to the chairman to certify that the conditions have been completed without further resolution and to sign and date the plot map at such time. Effects of the approval. The site plan approval and associated conditions shall be binding upon the applicant and all successive owners of land so long as such use shall occur. This approval shall remain effective as an authorization to secure the required permits and establish the uses for a maximum of 1 year from this date of approval, unless the applicant shall have submitted a written request and the planning board shall have adopted such resolution granted an extension and provided that the applicant has submitted proof of having diligently pursued the implications of the plans. Draft resolution was prepared by the chairman and was read, discussed, and amended by the planning board. Adopted July 8th, 2024 by the following vote. All in favor?
Should we read it?
Say it again?
Should we see it written?
Receive, say it again?
See it written for us, because this is a showed up this morning. And we discussed it, we cannot finalize the text. So.
Why not?
But by the way, why do we have to vote for the draft? Should we vote when it's final document?
I think we just talked about all the items that we were changing. You want to see
I want
another?
to see it on the paper.
Well,
Okay.
normally what we do is a motion is made, which we can call for a motion.
We already granted that, I believe.
Motion is made that the, this resolution be approved with all
Oh,
the
with changes, right.
with all the changes that.
Got it.
Proposed, and then you call the vote.
Okay, so you want to make that motion, Rick?
I make a motion that this, approval, the findings and the conditions of approval,
As amended.
as amended with all the changes we've discussed and which will be compiled and adjusted over the next day or two.
Yep.
That this be approved, so moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion from Rick, a second from Zach, all in favor.
I was just gonna say you need a super majority on this to vote and something.
Sounds like we're having. So I have a motion from Rick, a second by Zach, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion moves 6-0.
So the final document will be produced without any approval, without any.
Yes, the final document will be produced by these two and then will be uploaded to the folder. Okay, 6-0, one absent, which is Peter. Anybody else have anything? Okay, 7:49, guys. Hour 19 minutes. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move right into the next one, which is Planning Board 2024-16. Heirloom Farm, Jason Hutchings, Carolyn Hoskins, Patty Brooks from Control Point. This is a site plan approval at. All right, everybody else. Yeah, everybody good. We'll let them all in. Yeah. Okay, Alan, thanks. Don't forget your, hey, Ren, don't forget that. Thank you all, Mark. All right, you're welcome. Okay, well, it's only up to the time we open, but I'll add them in. No problems. Okay, guys, we're gonna get moving on to the next one since we're behind. Are you leaving? Hurry up. Okay, next application. If you're not here for the granary, we'll ask you to step outside. Planning Board 2024-16, a site plan approval in an AR3 district, which is Heirloom Farm of Jason Hutchins, Carolyn Hopkins, Representative Patty Brooks. Hi, Patty. See you at this one. This is located at 2921 Lucas Turnpike. The applicant is proposing a agricultural retail space for sales at their existing farm located off of Lucas Turnpike. Patty, I see, I'm sorry, Jason, Carolyn not joining us tonight?
They're traveling to rapidly turn.
Okay, excellent. So today is the public hearing. Applicant or Pat, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Janice Gomez Anderson from the firm of House and Shalom Polidoro.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
Okay,
to
great.
meet you.
Thank you for coming. Our planning board attorney, Mr. Gordon, will be right back. So we have a public hearing for this tonight. We've received about 39 public comments for this application already in writing. Those are in the plan. We do not read those aloud. They are memorialized into our public hearing and our public comment for the record. So that'll be in the decision. If the public comment is held open tonight, we will add any additional public comment that comes in as well. So that'll be in the folder, okay?
One gentleman got a bounce back and he asked.
Okay.
me if there's anyone I can submit it.
Forward it to me, I will accept it. Yep, no problem. Ma'am, would you like to introduce yourself one more time? Dave Gordon, I'm sorry.
Janice Gomez Anderson. Good.
Sure you guys have worked together. Okay. So you guys, Jason or Patty, want to give us a quick 30-second update as to where we are, and if not, that's okay. I can brief on it. But Patty, you haven't been here for this application, but you've done a lot of work on it. So I would love your 30-second elevator speech if you don't mind.
Absolutely. This is a site plan to utilize an existing barn, for, public sales. It's on 26.5 acres of land located on the southerly side of Lucas Turnpike. The property already is being farmed and has been for about the last 9 years, by Jason and Terry. The applicants have added parking spaces that was required by the board. The revised map shows the building sign that they already have on the facility. And at this point in time, we are just looking for, we have our daily operation hours, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. or dusk if earlier. They anticipate 2 to 5 employees, and it will be a proposed use of agricultural and agricultural retail sales.
Thank you very much. So we are here to talk about, the public is going to have their time tonight. I will give the public the ability to speak. I'm going to read my little elevator speech as well. As we open the public hearing, here are a couple of items for the public to be aware of and recognize. The public hearing is for public to express their knowledge and or input about this specific project. The board will grant public comment to community members who have signed up on the clipboard on the table located at the entrance to the community center. Community members who have signed up at the table will be granted between 3 and 5 minutes per person to speak. This opportunity to speak is not a question and answer from the board or the applicant, yet the opportunity to speak about the application and knowledge of the property. Comments should be related towards the health, safety, and welfare of the town of Rochester and this project in discussion. We will open the public hearing. We will start with the members who have signed up. After that, if you did not have the ability to sign up, we will give you the opportunity to speak. And then from there, if there's any members of the public who have submitted comment, we will have that conversation as well. So with that being said, Mr. Nelson. No problem, sir. Thank you for your firefighting service. We are on Heirloom Farm, public comment starting now, so you'll give you a minute to get set up, okay? Yep. Okay, first on my list is, Peter Sullivan at 37 Old Lucas. Mr. Sullivan?
Well, I had a lot
You
of
could just
questions.
stand, sir, you could just stand.
Okay, I had a lot of questions, which I hope to resolve during the discussion. So I did not have a position to.
Okay, no problem. Peggy Sullivan, same thing? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Can't read the handwriting on this one. How about Hank 4920 US 209?
4940.
4940, thanks. And your name, sir, just for the record?
Oh, Hank Hayek,
Got it.
and I apologize for.
That's okay. It's all good. Okay, the floor is yours.
I'll be brief. This is in support of the current application. My name is Hank Hayek. I live at Appledorn Farm at 4940 US 209. My family and I have lived here on and off since 2012 and full-time since 2020. We know Perry and Jason, the owners of the farm, because our children are in the same grade at Ronald Side High School. And we have become friends. We spend a fair amount of time volunteering at that farm. Besides growing food and making soap, Perry and Jason Hutchins have a flock of chickens for eggs, a flock of Icelandic sheep for wool, 2 farm dogs to keep the foxes away, and 2 llamas and several cats for, as best I can tell, comic relief. We've come to know them as lovely people who are devoted to their family, their animals, their farm, and their community. They've now applied for the ability to sell their products from their orchard and barn, which sounds like a great thing for them as well as for our whole community. I should briefly address the dispute over the right-of-way that passes Mr. Alex Banner's place of business. This right-of-way has been in continuous use by local farming families for many decades, and Kerry and Jason have continued to use it as such. This long-standing right-of-way has never been questioned until several years ago, after Mr. Banner acquired the property that separates Heirloom Farm from Lucas Turnpike to run a woodworking shop. I've met Mr. Banner only once. I heard that he had been intimidating farm customers. So I walked to Lucas Turnpike on the right-of-way to keep an eye on things. With photographs, filmed, and questions. That didn't faze me, but Mr. Banner's efforts at intimidation and targeted Perry and Jason, as well as anyone who's spoken up for them. His lawyers have been harassing everyone who wrote affidavits in support of the farm. It's a sort of stress that a family that spends all the waking hours running a farm should not have to deal with. I see absolutely no reason that Mr. Banner's business and Heirloom Farm produces side by side and both benefit from each other's existence. I believe that our town should be in full support of small family farms selling their own products on their own property, and I hope the board will approve the proposal. Thank you.
Jolie Green. I think it's- Jolie at the same address.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Great.
I'm writing to express my hope.
Better half.
Thank
There you go.
I'm writing to express my hope that you will approve the farm shop being built at Heirloom Farm to open in Accord. My husband and I are residents living at Appledorn Farm. We love the area and its historic farm community. Our daughter is a rising junior at Rondout Valley High School, and I'm a member of the high school music boosters. And we're members of the Accord Historical Society. We've become good friends with Carrie and Jason, and our family helps their family on Sundays when they offer porch pickup of vegetables, yarn, soap, and eggs to the local community. We met and got to know some really lovely neighbors when they come to purchase items and visit the animals on the farm. Their property is so beautiful, so beautifully cared for, and they've created a lovely haven for area residents. I've also been very concerned about how their neighbor, Alex Banner, who owns Wishbone Woodworking, has behaved over the last year. I have not met Mr. Banner, but I've seen him filming Carrie and Jason as they work to plant crops in their field. He has taken on an intimidating air, which I've heard about from customers who come to buy goods on Sunday mornings. Several customers shared stories of harassment by Mr. Banner. For a while, he stopped and blocked cars on the right-of-way in front of his shop to tell people they're not welcome on his property. He has spoken disparagingly of Jason and Carrie, and once when I drove by, he flipped me off without provocation. I question why a business that received economic enterprise overlay zoning, which according to the town is, quote, to foster economic development, diversification of land uses, and employment generation through the reuse and or redevelopment of underutilized properties. Why he is acting so out of step with the spirit of the zoning law. Everything about the described EEO's range of uses points to the desire for EEO zoning businesses to cooperate, be good neighbors, and operate in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. How is it that Mr. Banner can be so out of step with the historical farm and retain this zoning status? It seems he is flagrantly ignoring the basic premise of what was granted for his business. It is not clear why Mr. Banner does not see that customers visiting Heirloom Farm is a benefit to his business. It leaves me wondering what is happening in his business that he doesn't want people to see. He has gone to great lengths.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you there. This is not a character conversation, and this is not a neighbor to neighbor dispute.
Okay.
If you have something that is in regards to the health, safety, and welfare of the community, we will entertain it.
Okay, putting aside the issue of Mr. Banner,
No, I'm not gonna hear about Mr. Banner.
I
I'm gonna
just said
hear,
I was putting it aside,
oh, okay,
just as you asked.
got it, yeah, don't wanna hear about that anymore, thank you,
Putting that aside.
understood.
And I truly hope you will approve Heirloom's Farm Shop. It's a wonderful construction that will be a boon for our community. They have worked so hard to create a beautiful space where people can go and celebrate local offerings in an idyllic setting. If you haven't had the chance to visit, I hope you'll take a trip. It's quite a special place. And Harry and Jason and their kids have become treasured members of our community through their many good works.
Thank you very much. Okay, Thomas Elin, 5 Daisy?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I know Jason, really don't have him as a wife, but when I first came around, at the time I had some chickens in my house, and I had a smaller coop. He asked me, he said, what would I do with it? I said, I'm gonna get rid of it. And I offered him and he took it, so I kind of became friends, he's come by and stuff. I've come home out of the blue and there's, hey Tom, just stop by, dropped off the mail. And he got a hold of me and messaged, asked me to come down and see if I could help him today. So for really nice people, I think they do good for the community and they're just trying to make a living in our town. I think that, it should be get the okay to do it.
Thank you. David Wilt, I don't have an address for you, sir. Okay, your comments are welcome. That's okay.
I'm Dave Welch, I've been in this area way too long. I've just recently met them because somebody said you gotta start buying organic. It is nice to see an organic farm, or farmers starting in this area that is really easy access. I can pull my truck and trailer into the shop. I can get out and look at his produce and I can go back to work. It's what this town needs, what this town wants. And if he doesn't become a farmer, I'll put houses on his lot. That's what I do. He's got a great location now. Town should easily give him approval. That's what we need. More open space, more farmers, a lot more chickens running around.
All right, thank you, sir. Ruby Hutchins from 2905 Lucas. Hi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ruby Hutchins. I'm the applicant's daughter. I appreciate that you gave me time to speak. So we moved to this area about 16 years ago when I was 5 years old, and right after my little brother was born. We moved to a small house in Cohomson where we had a garden, a little forested area, and a pond. Since we had only a few acres, I convinced my parents to get a couple chickens. They agreed. And we planted tomatoes, herbs, and ground cherries. After a couple of years, the garden really started to take over and we loved it. And we slowly started growing our flock of chickens and started dreaming of living on a farm. After a long search, we finally bought the farm parcel our family now owns. And it's only a few miles from where we were living. My parents bought the farm in 2015 with the help of the Schoonmaker family, tilled a portion of the field and planted an organic sheep pasture. Within a couple of years, we fenced the field, started our flock by sending sheep, grew our flock of chickens, and planted as much as we could harvest. At first, we sold our extra eggs and vegetables to family, friends, and neighbors. As soon as our farm grew, we began selling to the general public. We now have over 400 chickens, 42 Icelandic sheep, 2 llamas, and 2 livestock guardian dogs. We sell our eggs, farm produce, wool products, and soap at the Rosendale Farmers Market, the Appleton Market, and, on site at our farm stand as well. Our farm is truly a small family farm run by our 4-person family with help from some of our friends and volunteers. As much work as it is to care for all our animals, the land and the crops, we really love what we do. Welcoming people to our farm to see the chickens that lay their eggs that they're eating, the sheep who produce the wool, to see the fruits, vegetables in the field, this is why we want to open Farm Shop. I've been working at the farm stand in the market over the last few years, and I've also really gotten to know many of our customers. We talk about the animals, what we grow, advice on pests and harvesting, recipes, and so much more. We hope the farm shop will be a place where people can make the connection between the animal or the plant they're eating and the product. I realize Alex Banner, who wishes this parcel didn't border a farm, and Rose Esposito are opposing our farm because they do not want us to use the right of way. But it is, since it's in our deed right to use this, since farmers have been using it for over 109 years, it is our right to use it. I, like many others, urge you to please approve my parents' application and allow Hudson Valley Animal Farm to welcome customers inside our farm. Thank you.
Martin Lupowitz. Skipping Martin. Okay, how about Albert DeJager?
Yeah, I'm one of those farmers that own the land from 77 to 96. And I always had unfettered access to the land, there's no question about it. And it's good, and I'm glad that Jason is making some use of the land now. And since, oh, you forgot something in the intro. Forgot about the dairy farmers. Mid-50s, in the 50s, mid-century, we had 100 dairy farmers in this area.
That was my next month's trivia. You took my thunder, Albert. That's all right, I'll get something new.
So, there's no question that there's a right of way there. And Mr. Schoolmaker used it, I use it a lot. Because I had corn there and lots of wagons of corn solids going out of there. And also in the winter, lots of wagons of manure around back on the field. So,
Thank you.
Thanks. Lisa Schicitano, how'd I do?
It's Chickasha.
I was close.
Well, if you don't look at it, it's really easy.
All right.
My name is Lisa. I live in High Falls in the town of Rochester, less than 5 minutes from Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm. I go to Heirloom Farm almost every Sunday for local produce, eggs, and baked goods, and to see the chickens and the sheep, especially these. I like to support local businesses in their endeavors, especially local farms. Therefore, I am in favor of the board's approval of Heirloom Farm's application to expand the use of the barn as a farm store. Other farms in our area have farm stores, so I think Heirloom Farm should have one too. In fact, while many of the local farm stores close over the winter, Heirloom Farm was open the entire winter this year. And that provided a really valuable service to our community. I hope it will do that.
Thank you. Alex Banner.
Just made some printouts, hoping you guys can look at.
Thank you.
I only made 10. I apologize in advance. It's the other side of the table.
We'll share. We can look. Yeah, we'll share. One for the record, and the rest are over there.
One next.
No, I'm good. You can hold it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alex Banner. I'm the owner of 2919 Pittsburgh Pike, which is the property Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm has falsely claimed to have a deeded right of way here. I'm here to oppose this application, not because I have a problem with their farm or their business, but because it improperly and illegally relies on my driveway to operate it. The owners of Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm have not been able to provide any proof of a right of way to the court. They're not able to provide proof of an easement to Central Hudson when they attempted to run power lines through their property through mine a few years ago. And they have not provided any legal proof of an easement in the application before you. My driveway is not a public road. There is no right of way. The town should not be able to approve an application that does not include legal ingress and egress. I purchased my property in 2019 to house my woodworking business and to make a portable commercial space for other small businesses. Since 2019, we have been home to a handful of small businesses, including my own, that directly serve our immediate community. This property serves as the livelihood of myself, my staff, and our tenants. Protecting the space and the people that use it is of utmost importance to me. In February of this year, I filed a lawsuit against Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm for trespassing and destruction of property. Since filing this lawsuit, their lawyers confirmed that they have no easement or deeded right of way that exists in public record. It's the top page of the thing I've just handed out to you. In New York State, the only way to validly grant an easement is through a written instrument signed by the owner of a property affected by the easement. I hired an expert title researcher and an expert surveyor. Both confirm no such document exists. There is no easement. There is no legally valid right of way. It simply doesn't exist. Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm has no justification to enter my property or to invite others to do the same. When the owners of Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm initially began construction on their barn, they presented the project to me as storage space for animal feed and water. But the real intentions for the barn were kept from me while their encroachments on my property grew over time. Over the past few years, occasional access with notice has changed into continuous daily use without permission. And despite my objection, construction has been 7 days a week, constant traffic through my property, constant heavy machinery and trucking. Beginning in November, they started advertising my driveway as a public access point to their customers. Dozens of people are coming through my property illegally to shop at their commercial retail space every Sunday. And now they stand before you all knowing they have no legal right to my property and are asking you, the board, to allow them to expand their days and hours. What Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm has is vague language in their deed that says that they have a right of way through the lowlands previously owned by Augustus Weeks. However, this language originates in their own chain of title and no easement exists. I cannot grant the person I sell my property to an easement through my neighbor's yard, and neither can the previous owners of Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm property. Even if an easement had been granted, it was not. Augustus Weeks owned my property, the property next door to me where Acorn Boulder School resides, as well as the residential property owned and occupied by the owners of Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm. All three of these properties have access to Lucas Turnpike and border the Hudson Valley Farm property. That's right, they have access to their farm from their own property, which provides access from the lowlands to Lucas Turnpike through the lands previously owned of Augustus Weeks. Hudson Valley Heirloom Farms has the ability to access their farm from their own property and do so on a daily basis. However, they choose to run the public through my property to ease the burden of having hundreds of people passing through their own residence. While they could easily access the business from their own property, they have forced the unnecessary burden onto my property, which I have sued to stop. I have a small map here that shows what Augustus Weeks owned and the properties all lined up together. I've included aerial images from the Ulster County Parcel Bureau of the Hudson Valley Farm property from 2016 and 21, show the development of their property. You can also see the paths used from their residence to their farm property. Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm repeatedly claim they have an easement, but that's not how property law works. No matter how loud and constantly somebody claims to have rights to someone else's property, it's not theirs until it's written and filed instrument giving access. One cannot say a falsehood over and over in hopes of having it be true. That's not how the law works. They have absolutely no legal right to use my property for access as they claim in this application. You will see Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm opted not to request additional signage for their project. This is because they are legally prevented from doing so. While I await relief from Ulster County Supreme Court, the judge has issued a restraining order preventing Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm from posting or installing anything on my property or the area surrounding it that suggests their property can be accessed through my property. I ask that the planning board reject this application, which violates my property rights and will cause additional harm to my property. The precedents the town would set by allowing someone to grant themselves and the public illegal access to another person's property is morally wrong and legally dubious. Please do not allow Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm to access my property without making them provide legal proof demonstrating they have a valid easement. At a very minimum, the application approval should be tabled until our due process with the court system comes to fruition or until Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm submits an application using access from their own property, not mine. Thank you.
Tina, same address,
I'm Tina Banner, I'm married to Alex.
better half?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, according to the public. My name's Tina, I'm married to Alex. We own our property together at 2919 Turnpike. I work for small local businesses, including Acorn Waldorf School, who's here tonight. As the bookkeeper, my kids go there, 3 kids in the local school district. My community matters a lot to me. The success of small business matters a lot to me. And I really, really value our personal freedoms and our property rights. I don't have to be nice to people who trespass on my property. Let's see. Despite having no permission to use our driveway revoked, their constant brazen trespassing has only increased, and now we find ourselves standing before the town pleading that they be required to show some proof that they are acting within their rights. They haven't been able to provide that to the court, and they can't provide it to the town either. I believe it will take an order from the court to get them to stop. Our requests and demands have had no impact on their behavior, and neither the town, the sheriff, nor the police have been able to provide any protection in regards to our right-of-way disagreement. Hudson Valley Heirlooms Farm's constant trespassing have included not only ingress and egress, but property damage. They've expanded our driveway without permission, and they have several times stomped onto our property and cut trees down. We have provided the entire chain of title for both of our properties to the town, and no easement exists. Hudson Valley Heirloom Farms' own lawyers have submitted a letter to the Ulster County Supreme Court stating that no easement can be found. We have submitted that letter as well. What further proof is needed? If Hudson Valley Heirloom Farm wants an easement through our property, they will have to prove that they have a legal right to one from the courts. None of it exists today. The town should not approve an application that doesn't include legal ingress and egress. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan, would you like the opportunity to speak or not? You don't have to. I'm just giving you the opportunity if you'd like. As you signed up.
I would like to make a general comment.
Sure.
You know, I've come to know Jason lately. He is a member of the local Rotary Club now. We're glad to have him as a member. He's a very caring individual. Speaking of health, safety, and welfare, he's extremely interested in other people's health, safety, and welfare, and he goes out of his way to help meet their needs. Another point I'd like to make is I would hope that approval is forthcoming because there are many properties I would imagine along the creek that have the same right to sell agricultural products. So I hope that is forthcoming. So I did want to go on record as supporting the application.
Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan, same comment or you're okay?
Same comment. I just feel like there should be some practical way to both approve a long-standing easement and also recognize the contribution. We're all making contributions by living here, but making a contribution by providing a wonderful service and also the hard work that people don't understand if they're not farmers. I just hope there'll be some peaceful, cordial resolution to this problem.
Thank you. There's an array of the public who has not had the opportunity to speak yet because you did not hear when we pulled the sign-up sheet. If you'd like the opportunity, you may. Yes, ma'am? Your name?
Rose Esposito.
Okay, Rose, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to say that prior to Banners owning the property, my family has been on that, lived on that property and for close to 100 years. So I'm familiar with Mr. DeJager. I'm familiar with Mr. Schoonmaker. They've always gone through our property. Periodically, Mr. DeJager raised cow corn, which doesn't take a lot of nurturing. Drive through, plant it, drive out, get the corn, drive through, pull out. You know, however many times a season. 7, 10, I'm not sure. Same goes for Jack Schoonmaker, except Mr. Schoonmaker grew on a sweet corn. So it did need more coverage, so to speak. But once again, 10, maybe 15 times a season. when Hutchins bought the property, personally, we were thrilled that it was gonna be an organic farm. No more aerial spraying of toxic. We were really happy. And we were really happy that now the Hutchins had access to their property through their driveway. And a question for me is, why aren't they using their driveway?
Thank you. I saw another hand over here. Mr. Davis.
Charlie Davis, I'm a local farmer and builder. I do quite a bit of business with Alex, so anyway, at one point when Governor Rose owned the property, I originally went into the house from Pettit. And the first time I went in, I went into his driveway. It was a little bit tight with some of the bigger equipment, so I approached Governor Rose and asked if I could use theirs the right way. And of course, they said, it's limited for what it is. On a safety issue, though, if you actually stand at the end of Mr. Hudson's driveway and the end of Mr. Banner's driveway, from a municipal standpoint, from a highway standpoint, there's much more of a view, both directions from their current driveway beyond the Warwall School than where it is on the other side.
Anyone else?
Can I speak again?
Sure, quickly.
Okay. In my deed, I had the right of way, so what he's saying is not true. Was written in my deed. There's a right of way to that property at the back. So I'll have to say.
Okay. Anyone else? Last chance. Sir in the back, thinking about it? Go ahead. Your name? What is it?
Dylan.
Dylan, last name? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go on the public record.
Sure.
To say, that I know the Banners, I think everyone is support of a great organic farm. However, I think the issue comes down to simply, as Rose Esposito said, why not use the driveway that is on the property rather than a driveway that is on someone else's property, which they do not have.
Understood. Yes, sir. Name? One more time.
Ken Walsh.
Go ahead, Ken.
There's a great scene in A Few Good Men where Tom Cruise is drilling Jack Nicholson and says, "How do you guys know where to go to eat?" And he was just like, "Do you need to tell them to go eat?" And he's like, "No, they know where it is." This is not an anomaly. There are roads in Rosendale that are roads. They're not on the maps. They're roads. I think Fording Place in Stone Ridge might be another. So this is not an anomaly. This property that he's been on for 9 years, there's people that goes back literally 100 years. This is by usage an established right of way. And there are certain, once again, not everything is on the deeds. And that gentleman right there, Harley. Harley brought up a very valid point. By his own admission, he says, "Well, the road's a little tight." But if there was an emergency, if there was a problem, you can get an ambulance, a fire truck, anything right down the right of way as it is. You could not say the same nor do the same for Jason's driveway. And it's the position that his name. I'm sorry.
No, I.
Gotcha. No problem.
My equipment's 13 foot wide, but just so you're.
That's why, but you brought it down to right, but I don't want to go back and forth with you. I want to.
We're not going to go back and forth.
Awesome. So, besides the fact that not every road is on the deed, it is understood. It's been understood for 100 years. This is not new. It's not like an upstart came in and brought a bulldozer and made a road over other people's property. The concept that this is doing harm is almost ludicrous. If you talk about the well-being and the safety of this community, I would tell you that actions taken by that gentleman are contrary to what you say you stand for. By putting garbage and putting things in the site, by telling people they're trespassing, by just doing things that are just horrible, that are just not decent. If you look at your responsibility, I would tell you that there's a letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The letter of the law says you can't go 55 miles an hour on a given stretch of road. The spirit of the law says if your wife's in labor or somebody's bleeding in your backseat, you go as fast as is appropriate. And I think the letter of the law in this body and the spirit of what it is that you also are upholding to. We are an agricultural community. We used to be neighbors and friends. We would deal with disagreements without getting nasty, mean, foul, intimidating, jumping on well trucks. All this pattern of behavior that is just, it's horrible. It's horrible. But this body not only upholds the law and the letter of law, it should do something about the spirit of law. We are an agricultural community. We are farmers, and we have been for hundreds of years. We work off the land. What they're doing is a benefit, no chemicals. You can't, and as far as the character, you can have these meetings for 100 years. You would never find anybody to speak against Jason or Carrie's character. And that's important. When you're dealing with people and you're looking at what they're trying to do, you have to look at their intent. We don't live in a vacuum. We live in a community. We're a living, breathing thing.
Thank you. Martin Lupowitz, did you come back? Okay, we'll mark him as a no-show. Okay, doesn't sound like there's anyone else. Yes, ma'am. Your name?
Carol Jordan, I'm an administrator at Acorn Law School. I'm also a lawyer, and I'm sad to hear this character attack on Alex Banner, who I need to say I know to be a tremendous human being. I'm not going to go into why, and I'm not going to go into interactions I've had with Jason, because that's not the issue. You all know that. That's not the issue. Is there an easement or not? Please wait for the Ulster County Supreme Court to make that decision. Take it off your table. It's not the issue. Please, can we stay to that? I mean, this is very sad. You're all talking about community and the importance of community, and you're attacking this man like this. That's it. Let's just stick to what, you know what your jobs are. We don't need to tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, your name?
Hi. I heard a lot of stuff here.
Your name, sir? Your
My
name?
is Alex Cho.
Alex, thank you.
I'm a direct neighbor of Jason. So I hear a lot of wonderful stuff. She just mentioned it. It's supposed to be community. And all you're finding over is one stupid path. So let's put everything away and just have this path because God put it in his mind. That's it. I invited people to my house. Rose and Joe invited you. Come on. We moved here to look at the community. We moved here to experience the community. Why fight over a stupid road? You have a business. What's wrong with having someone else using your? You guys want to use my road? Go ahead. Just don't dump rubbish on that thing. That's important. Jason, the way everyone can paint the story, he as a farmer looks like a day. He has another job. At the crack of dawn, 5 in the morning, he's out there. I'm just barely opening my eyes because, hey, I don't look too. Probably I would take to the gym, but she reads, spend the hours sweating, working there already. 11 o'clock at night, he's still out there. If I need, as a neighbor, if I need help from him, he can guarantee that he will be there to help me. The one thing which I do not like about him is that, Jason, you are horrible. You send the snapping turtles to my pond. It's horrible. So I have 2 visiting snapping turtles all the time. Besides that, you know what? I can rely on them as a good neighbor to help me with it. We came to my rescue when I needed to make a trip to Albany to get a bus to Montreal. So these are neighbors who you can rely on. So if these neighbors are not that nasty as what they want to be, it's a joke. Yes, hi.
These are stand-up wonderful people.
Yeah.
They're really wonderful.
Hey, guys, this is not a back and forth. Have your opportunity.
So did I say anything about you? Thank you. So I think we all fairness out. We all humans here, right? We all, most of us, some of us move from the city to the community. So let's emphasize the role and community as itself. Right? Rose and Joe, I used to go in the house. You guys think, oh no, they're gonna 100 minutes. This is how it's supposed to be.
Alex,
We would always say,
speak to us.
okay, yes.
Thank you.
So I'm saying that at the end of the day, it's important that we all support each other. It's a farming community, right? There are other businesses that spin up, it's all good. But don't destroy the farmers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I want to say something.
Your name, sir.
Marco Shuhan.
Go ahead.
I moved up here 34 years ago, and I worked at some points for $7.50 in a quarry when we were having our first child. About 5 years ago, I decided to start my own business, milling wood. I have a passion for milling wood, and I like to, mill exotic slabs of wood. It was going to be a one-person business. I tried to rent land from Alex and Tina. I think we spent 2 years working on permit, a year or two, something like that. We finally were approved. It was the property between the shop and the farm. And somehow, even though I was approved, I couldn't put my one-person business up. So I don't really like hearing all this talk about being polite and stuff. He stopped me from having my business. That's all I have to say.
Okay, we're gonna end the public hearing on that comment, and we will keep the public hearing open. This is board time now, so we'll keep the public hearing open. We have received 39 public comments in writing. So those items are still available for the members of the public who are here tonight. If you'd like your public comment to be in the record in writing, you are more than welcome to submit that to the town's clerk, to the town planning board's secretary, Jasmine, which her internet website is available on the internet. Board time, we'll go around. Mr. Gordon, do you want to weigh in on the next legal standpoint on where we are on this point?
Okay. Well, to anybody who's seen the site plan, it's clear that the site plan relies on an access road that goes through the Banner's property, I want to forget the better half, out to Lucas Turnpike. It's right here on the map. I haven't looked in complete detail with all the items that have been submitted. This, as some people have alluded, this dispute is now in court. It's in Ulster County Supreme Court. So I've looked at some of the documents that have been put into Supreme Court, plus some of the documents that we've received, some of which actually overlap. And I do have two impressions. First of all, and I just want to back up before I go forward. What I'm going to tell you has, and you can make your own decision on it, has nothing to do with interpersonal relations. It has nothing, unfortunately, to do with community. When disputes arise and when they ultimately end up in court or in legal proceedings, lawyers can speak to those issues. I'll leave to everybody in this room and to particularly to the board to judge the personal dynamics of the people and families. Many of you go back many, many years in the community. That's not what I'm going to speak about. The mere fact, this site plan again requires this access road. There's no way around it. A site plan requires access anyway. It's on the map. There's no alternative route. The mere fact that it is in court is a very strong, in my view, discouragement for this board to process the site plan approval, if for no other reason, and the board needs to understand this. Whatever decision we might make that the access exists, or the access doesn't exist, or the access is not relevant, is subject to the superseding authority of the court. Suppose, for example, we decided that the access does exist and grant the site plan approval. If the court decides the access doesn't exist, those two determinations are not of equal authority and dignity. We're out, basically, and we will, and all the work that we have done and whatever we have signaled will be superseded, and vice versa. If we were to decide it didn't exist and the court decides that it does, then we will be superseded as well. So there's very little that we can do that can stand the superseding judgment of the court. Now, if we were lucky enough to make the same decision as the court, we could, then we're probably okay. And it just puts us a little bit out in front of that. So now I also want to say that I don't want to encourage the board simply to suspend an application just because of a lawsuit. Because that would obviously invite almost anybody. You can file a lawsuit. Anybody in this room can file a lawsuit against anybody else in this room for any purpose. And the only way to figure that out is ultimately there'll be a motion to dismiss a couple of months later and you get done. But filing a lawsuit, anybody can do that as long as you are willing to pay $305 and prepare the papers, et cetera. So I don't want to encourage the board to suspend applications just because somebody filed a lawsuit that if indicated would essentially make the application illegal. So it's important for the board to look, if you think about doing that, to look at whether the lawsuit is, has legs, whether it's significant or whether it's frivolous. And I've taken, again, a quick look. And that gets me to the second part of what I'm saying, which is that however this ultimately comes out, it does not appear to me that the lawsuit is frivolous or unsupported. There, as Mr. Banner stated, there was a letter, and I can describe a little bit about the procedures here because it's important and it was alluded to. But the short message is that as part of the initial procedure of the court, which was to determine what's called a preliminary injunction, which the court is still thinking about, there was a letter submitted by the applicant's attorney indicating that at present that they cannot find a writing indicating that there is solid access. And I want to back up a moment and explain what's going on here, because I know many members of the community have spoken out a little bit differently. There's two types of access over somebody else. One is called an easement. And an easement is legally binding, but not only the two parties, but all of their successors. What's called runs with the land. It's also typically, not always, very clearly defined in terms of what the access rights are, where it is, in many cases, when it is, et cetera. These are legal documents. They are filed with the county recorder, just like a deed. Often they're part of a deed. They have the same, essentially, it's a property transfer, property rights transfer, just as we discussed in the previous application, when we were talking about that, whether we would demand an easement from the applicant. And then I said, well, we're going to fall short of that because that's an actual transfer of property rights. An easement is a permanent legal transfer of property rights. Now, you can have access over somebody's land where you don't have an easement under something called a license. And a license is an informal grant of access. It can be oral. Say you have access, sure, go ahead and use it. Or it could actually be reduced to writing, it could be in contract. It's typically, though, personal. It may be for a term of years or whatever, but it doesn't run with the land. And typically, if it's really informal, if it's oral, it can be revoked at any time. So those are your two types of access rights. One is an easement and one is a license. I would suggest that, and it's pretty clear, that in order to grant the site plan approval, we need to see an easement. Because if it's just a license, it can be revoked. And in fact, the landowner has more or less expressed an interest in revoking it. So at this point, we do not have solid access rights that have been depicted on this site plan. Again, the applicant's attorney submitted a letter to the court indicating that they don't at present have a document recording those access rights. Now, the neighbor overstated it a little bit. This is not an admission that there are no access rights here. It's just an admission that a concession, actually, that at present they don't have a document. In court, there's a process called discovery in a civil lawsuit. That means each side gets to look at all the documents the other side has. Each side gets to depose the other side and ask them questions as witnesses. If anybody's been following a lot of the news and seen some of this. So there's every possibility. And fact, there's information that the public has generated as well that may come into play as well. I do not know where this is going, and it's also worth pointing out that the applicant has countersued essentially on some of the theories that we've heard, that for certain types of easements that are not formally granted by a writing, but rather have accrued either over time or what's called by necessity. There are certain legal doctrines going back for decades and centuries that allow somebody to sue and to gain an easement because either they've been using it forever or because they need it for certain circumstances. And that is in the papers here. This has not even started yet before the court. So I have no idea how this is going to turn out. And nothing I'm saying should in any way prejudice the likelihood that the applicant is going to prevail on one of these theories, or that they could discover that they're going to ultimately find this written easement. All this is possible. But at present, there is no such document. There's no such documentation. And the attorney's letter to the court indicates that they don't have it yet. So that's something that I believe the board needs to take into account. I see that Zoe's got a question.
Well, hang on, before we go to board time.
I want to mention one other thing because it needs to be cleared up. As part of this lawsuit, the neighbor, Mr. Banner, asked for what's called a preliminary injunction. In fact, that's the proceeding by which the letter was written. That's a process by which you make a motion, which is a formal thing in the court, and the court decides what the status quo is going to be during the pendency of the case. The case can actually take many, many, many months, or even a few years. That has not been decided yet. What was decided was, stay with me here, when you file a motion for preliminary injunction, even that motion can take several months to decide. In fact, in this case, it's actually taken, it's now on 5 months that it's been before the court. And so what can sometimes happen, especially if there's an immediate situation that requires an injunction, is what freezes the status quo. And what you can do when you file a motion for preliminary injunction, you can ask to freeze the status quo during the pendency of the injunction motion, which has now taken 5 months. That's called a temporary restraining order, and that was referred to here. And I want to let the board know that was filed for here, and it was only partially granted. And what the judge decided was he was going to enjoin on a temporary basis until the motion is decided, which can come at any time. But for the last 4 months, whenever I have to look at the exact dates, that some new activities were enjoined. In other words, they can't put up signs, they can't clear any land that's on Mr. Banner, they can't clear any land that's on Mr. Banner's property. But the access, the physical access that has been historically enjoyed, as many people have described, was not enjoined. In other words, that physical access is currently allowed as of present. So whatever that means, if anybody wants to drive up to the farm, they can do so under the judge's order, at least until he decides the preliminary injunction motion, which will decide the same issue for the pendency of the litigation. And then ultimately the litigation will decide it in the future. So the bottom line is, number one, there's no solid documentation of an easement. Number two, the matter's in court, which means that whatever we decide can be superseded, and the board should very much, I believe, take that into account. Number three, this could turn out either way. Number four, this has nothing to do with the traditional relationships that have been described. So that's my preliminary.
So before we go to board time, applicants, Patty, Jason, and Janice, in the words of Dennis Doyle, our Ulster County Planning Board Director, we want to try to get to yes as fast and as soon as possible. Sounds like you have access based on your current property that potentially you're accessing privately through your homestead. Is that an option?
No.
That we could use that?
No.
Okay, so if that is not an option, we would have to wait until we have a judgment from the Ulster County Court in order to move forward with the application. Based on the documents that you've submitted, things as of right now are going smoothly. Mr. Church has done his review. We've had all of the involved agencies that we needed to have our review. The public has now spoken, and that's where we're at right today. So in attempts to find an alternative solution, that obviously potentially could be one. If that is not an option, then I think at this point we're going to have to wait.
I just
Yes, ma'am.
disagree.
Okay.
I understand that
this board doesn't have to wait. This board can make its decision because, as Mr. Gordon just said, that currently, as it stands at this moment, there is access. And then Jason and Carrie take the risk that that access is denied them. So you can grant the application and then the application, they go forward, and then if a preliminary injunction is in place, then they can't, and then they have to figure out something else. But it's not this board's, this board's place to make, it is a place to make decision on access. And as Mr. Gordon just said, that access currently, under the temporary restraining order, is that there is access. That access, there are very, very strong legal arguments going to, and many of you lived in this community forever, probably driven past this entrance forever yourself, that they have an easement, whether or not we can locate the deed in the Greg Lahare and Mr. Banner's chain that says they have a deeded access. There's certainly a long history and very likely to be found that there's restricted access on behalf of their own farm. And even so, the way that potentially the purpose of the restraining order or the temporary restraining order or preliminary injunction is to maintain a status quo in some form or another. When you apply for a temporary restraining order, it was denied with respect to any of the access. So they're allowed to access the property. The state of the law and the state of affairs is that they can access the property. If they, assuming if we move forward into whether a temporary restraining order is granted, the preliminary injunction is granted, one of the factors in making that determination is the likelihood of success in the merits. If that is denied them, and so if when the decision comes out and Mr. Banner or Greg is denied, if it is denied, okay, the farm would continue to have access, okay? And it's also the court saying, we're not sure we see a likelihood of success in the merits. So my point is basically that rather than play court, which I don't think you're trying to do, is you look at what this current state of affairs is, which is that there is currently access, and that they grant the application if that's what you were going to do, which we believe that everything is in line to do that. And then if the state of affairs changes, that's a problem for Carrie and Jason to address. And a hypothetical situation would be, what if you had granted some application to somebody and they had an easement over somebody's property, and then there was a dispute about it after the fact? It's the same scenario.
Right, so in our situation in the planning board, it is the applicant's responsibility to provide us a deeded access or right of way as a number of our eighth item on our checklist is required for the application. Mr. Hutchins provided that information. Our attorney's responsibility is to review that right of way and deem that the access is actually approved and authorized. As of today, we do not have the substantial documentation that is provided that we have an access to utilize that property as of today.
So what I would ask is permission, in the time to submit additional materials.
Absolutely. So what we will do today is, as we said earlier, we will leave the public hearing open, granting the authority for the public to review those documents that are going to be submitted going forward. In addition to any more information that is provided by public, potentially more information in regards to health, safety, and welfare of the application. If granted, Mr. Hutchins and Patty, who is a seasoned professional, gets us those documents. In the next 2 weeks, we'll get to you on the August agenda and we'll look at it then. Alrighty? I think at this time, we don't have sufficient documentation in order to wait.
I think you're negotiating with another lawyer, with your lawyer, right? Our lawyer.
No, they said they're going to provide additional documentation to satisfy that requirement of our requirement for the checklist.
You have an easement?
They're going to give them the time to provide that.
I'm going to see what we can provide.
Yeah. I don't want to.
Okay, not the only.
Right, at this point.
Whole thing tonight is it's in court. They got to produce an easement.
Right, so they're not going to be put back on a future agenda until we are provided that documentation.
I want to make sure, remember that there's a clock in terms of the amount of time that you can leave the
public
hearing open. So I want to make sure that our attorney certainly knows that we don't get into any kind of box.
Well, the applicant can always agree to, keep it open past that.
What is it, 60 days?
It's 62 usually.
62.
So, or if they don't want to, we can go ahead and
make a determination
on the site plan. I just wanted a couple of comments. First of all, I think with all respect, that the issues are different. I mean, counsel is correct that because the judge did not, give a the judge kept the status quo with respect to the access. So if anybody on the board or everybody on the board wants to go to the farm the next time it's open, you can drive down that road.
Correct.
I don't think that mere fact getting in, and by the way, the judge can change that as soon as he rules on the preliminary injunction, which could come, it's really coming at any time, literally. I don't think that fact is what is the issue that's before the board. The issue before the board is whether the site plan proposal has the access that it needs into the future and not what it is sitting here today or next month. I would also suggest that if the board were to proceed to a determination on this issue and ultimately on the site plan, whatever determination we make would almost certainly be bounced into the court. Because, I mean, sometimes you make a determination, it's always subject to an Article 78. In this case, the invitation is almost engraved already because the court situation already exists. And I can't see whichever side is disappointed by our determination wouldn't just go ahead and file either an amended petition or an amended answer in the court, just in order to throw this in there. For instance, if we were to rule in favor of the site plan, given the fact that the neighbor has already sued over the access, the neighbor is probably going to still think that there's no real access here and would just sue us in the same way that he's suing them and vice versa. So that is the ultimate, and ultimately that's the answer. This will be determined by the judge. The only question is whether we make our decision before that and then run the risk of reversal in further direction from the court or suspended.
Right. So I think at this point, rather than the board getting involved in anything, you have the ability now to, as you asked, to provide the documentation. The deadline, Jasmine, for the August meeting is going to be July 29th. That will be directly submitted by the end of the day to the town planning board secretary. That can be submitted in writing or in person, email or in person. And then we'll go from there and see where we are. If we need more additional time, we will make that request to the applicant for additional time for the public hearing to stay open. If not, then we'll go from there.
I did have one question.
Sure.
Are the written comments that you have received, are they available on the website?
They are available by FOIL. And that goes,
Do you really have to FOIL?
you do.
documents related
Those have to
our
go to the,
application?
that's part of our process through the town planning board. And Mr. Hutchins is very familiar with that process. You can request that through the town clerk. And all those documents will be provided via email. I think we've done it in the past.
I also want to make clear for council, if you have any further arguments or research or anything like that, that would change what I told the board, I'm happy to review it if you can send it on to me.
That would be part of this.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Patty, are you done for the night?
I am.
We'll see you next month.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The next application is, you want to take 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes. We'll look at 8.
Good job, by the way.
You request that from the town clerk. Your statement. Go to the town clerk, indicate anything you want. Hey. Thank you very much. Okay, guys, if your heirloom farm application, please move on. Thank you. Well, you're protected in some way. Just let me go find the layers. Farm operation doesn't make any difference.
Well, again, and these ones are permanent in the corner by the right of way. So I would be, I mean, these people will put the right of way. But when we, I don't see the notification. Right away. I don't need right away. Oh, that's part of it. No.
Hey guys, let's keep it. Alina, let's keep it. Lost half your morning, or I know. I have a strict deadline. I want to go home.
What's your name, Joe Biden? Come on.
No, I want to go home. It's 9 o'clock. All right, we got a couple more. We're almost. Here's another. Victorians. That's the map.
You have to.
Do you have anybody else over there? Cindy Park? Outside? We never saw. Okay. Next application, 2024-20, minor subdivision art. In an R2 district for the applicant Peter Sutherland, Representative Bill Eggers from Ettenbach, Eggers and Carr. Bill, this is at 304 Stony Kill. The applicant is proposing a 3-lot subdivision with frontage on the Stony Kill. I believe we spoke at the last meeting that you were going to update the map to reflect some of the things we discussed. You want to give us the 30-second elevator speech?
Yeah, I think the primary thing that we didn't have shown yet last time was the proposed building sites, driveways and such, limited disturbance areas. Last time it was just, here's the lots. Now we've got, this is where the proposed development is. So,
So Bill, did you get me a feasibility from Barry? I know we talked about, on the 2 new lots?
No, we haven't done that yet.
Okay.
We're just getting started on.
Okay.
It's in front.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing holes and things.
Okay. We're gonna need that, obviously, when it's available.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna give the board the opportunity to speak, go around the room, see if there's anything we're missing. And then we'll go from there. So Peter, if you don't mind.
I believe that we talked about a shared driveway possibility.
Yeah, we talked about a shared driveway apron, right?
Would be lot 2, lot 1.
Yes.
And also are wetlands indicated?
We don't have wetlands.
I thought that was on the.
We identified that there was a seasonal stream and that we were going to stay 100 feet from it, I believe, right? It was in the back with no effect to anything?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And that was one of the things we said, well, once we see where the proposed development is, that we're not within 100 feet of that season.
Okay, great. What do we get with the apron?
This is the applicant, Mr. Sutherland. Yeah, he definitely is not interested in doing that.
Okay. Just don't want to share the apron with the new potential new neighbor. What is your thought?
We provided a letter. You should have received a letter.
Okay.
With a whole, several pages of reasons and why that's a concern.
I don't have a letter.
I didn't see one in the folder.
I got maps.
I have maps, no letter, sir. Mr. Sutherland, give us the 30-second. Sure.
The reasons are, one, that the present lot configuration.
Okay. The check for the escrow fee?
Jasmine? Yes?
Got the check, all right? The letter was supposed to have been with that.
Okay. We'll look in the folder. I mean, I didn't see it in this folder.
All right.
Unless you have one copy handy, let's see. Okay, so we have it, but it's not loaded to the Google folder. Our apologies. Give us the 30-second.
30 seconds?
Just see
All right, so look, the lot configurations have sufficient road frontage.
Correct.
40 acre has 400 feet, 10 acre has 175 feet. So it complies with the lot frontage requirements. So the configuration is conforming. That's one of the reasons I'm pointing out. The other is the drainage and disturbance. And that's why that lot line is angled right there, because there is a small drainage ditch along the edge of the road that's draining the drainage from the road. That goes underneath the culvert on my driveway. It goes up through there, and then it makes a direct, almost right angle into the land. So if you were to share that apron, you would have to recross that stream, which would require another culvert, require ditching for the culvert.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So Bill, you're gonna need to outline on there that, I see you have the drainage ditch, but I don't know if there is the culvert a town road culvert?
Well, it's my
It's your driveway culvert. Okay,
The
understood.
water goes under my driveway culvert, and then it goes right into the land, so you would have to recross.
Understood.
The stream again.
Completely get it. No problem. Makes sense to us. That's good. So the shared driveway is out for good reason. The other two lots, Bill has outlined the distance from well and septics. That's fine. We're gonna need, so just add the feasibility still to your list from the letter from Barry.
Right,
Or
and we're working on the actual, help from approval
Yep.
for creating one.
Okay, great. So either on the decision, Board of Health approval or a feasibility study will be required. There's nothing new there. Mr. Sutherland, anything else in the letter that you wanted to discuss, or was that the only reason not to have it? Because that's good enough for us. Okay. So I'm gonna give the board opportunity and then we'll go from there. So Peter, anything else? I think that satisfies both of those items. Okay, Cindy?
Makes sense.
Great. Zorian? Rick? Zach? No. Anne Marie? Okay, so can I have a motion to set the public hearing for the next meeting?
I make a motion to set the public hearing for our next meeting.
I have a second from Anne Marie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any objections? 7-0. Mr. Sutherland, we'll see you at the next meeting for public comment. Thank you. Barry, are you done for the night? Bill, sorry?
Yes.
You are? Okay, we'll see you at the next meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Next application is 2024-15 with RV Associates of Shane Rickson Gasline Petroleum. Board, this is a special use permit in a business district on Route 209 in Medicahonks. Representative Jared Rizzi, but I don't see Jared. Jared, okay, Jared. And you two guys, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Tyler here, also with Lavella.
Okay.
I'm filling it in for this team this evening.
Okay.
And I'm Philip Green, traffic consultant with Colliers Engineering.
Very good. One more time, Kyle and
Bill.
Yep. Okay, so applicants, last time we sent you away, you had some work to do in regards to an outstanding list of items. Do you want to bring us up to date as to where you are?
Yes, so since we were last here in May, since that time, the summary of what's been updated. The main thing is just providing a lot of engineering design to the plans. So we were last before you with a concept plan. We've added a lot more information there for grading, drainage, erosion, scent control, lighting, landscaping, and details for the site. We've added additional between the project sites and the church. We have provided 3 parking spaces, the additional parking spaces that are specifically marketable for the parking station. The architectural plans that you see on the screen behind you were provided. The traffic study was completed, and the board request is really here tonight to answer any questions on that study.
Okay, so let's take the elephant in the room. Phil?
Yes.
Hit us.
Okay,
So, we prepared a traffic impact study.
Yep.
That study included data from New York State DOT for the Route 209 corridor. We also performed turning movement counts at the intersection of 209 and Medical Road. We also had machine counts, automatic traffic recorder counts at Medical Haas to get daily and additional variations of traffic flow. Those counts were done in May and June. June counts were higher, of course, with the activities that occur along that corridor. In terms of the time periods that we focus on in our study, weekday AM and weekday PM, basically commuter hours during the weekday, and midday on Saturday as the highest time period of volumes. In order of magnitude, traffic volumes passing this portion in front of the site on 209 ranges from about 900 vehicles an hour to the highest being about 1,150 vehicles per hour in the afternoon rush hour. Saturday is also in that 900 range. And then on Medicahans, the variation in the morning is about 100 vehicles per hour total both direction, going up to 250 vehicles total both direction on a Saturday. So that's the existing condition.
Sure.
Our traffic study is done in accordance with New York State DOT and standard, what we call the Institute of Transportation Engineers criteria for estimating trips, evaluating peak hours. We also collected accident data from New York State DOT for that intersection. Showed variation of accidents, no specific pattern, a bunch of animal involvement, but some left turn accidents, some rear end accidents. In terms of the project, the initial site plan, we had recommended shifting the driveway to 209 further to the east. The site distance is good at that location. It also gets us further away from the intersection of Medicahans and Trotter Lane, I guess is the stub of point from there. And based on the volumes here today and projections for the site, we're recommending a left turn lane. So that would require widening of 209 to allow people to take a left turn in and not hold up through traffic.
Right.
The study was submitted to New York State DOT in the local Ulster County office as well as the Poughkeepsie office. We have not received a seeker number. Typically, the first step is they'll give us a seeker number.
Sure.
That was submitted about 3 weeks ago. I spoke to the Poughkeepsie office today. They haven't reviewed it yet.
So your proposal to
Yes.
mitigate traffic
Correct.
is to widen 209 to add a left turn only going north on 209 from the Kerhonkson, Ellenville area to make the left after Medicahonks Road into
Correct.
the gas station.
Correct.
Will that include a left-hand turn into Medicahonks at the same time?
Right now, we don't have that proposed.
Okay.
That will be DOT's review
Sure.
and their input. But we don't have that at this time. We don't have their input yet.
So
based on the volumes on the road, we know we need to
you
have
have
at our access.
the road has to widen in order to get it.
Correct. Correct. We have to widen so we have one lane in each direction plus paved shoulders along our frontage. So we would have to widen to add an additional lane and then reconstruct the shoulders, because the shoulders are not full
Of
depth
course.
paved. So the widening and the improvement extends not only at the axis, but you transition back to the existing road surface.
I mean, thank you for that. It's good.
And that's where we are right now. That's
Right.
that's-
So in my opinion, traffic is up in the air pending that secret number, pending the determination, which could take 3 days or 3 years. We have no idea how New York State DOT is. Number one. Number two, we have other mitigating factors that we discussed at the first meeting, which consists of the scenic byway, consists of traffic, the AP overlay district, the environment with the gas in the ground in neighboring properties. We talked about the historic district with SHPO, with our church next door in the cemetery. So let's talk about those things as to where we are on mitigating those items, and then we can determine whether we have enough information to A, do seeker, B, talk about going to the next steps, if any, C, this is a special use permit, so we need to review our code of 140-55 is to make sure that it fits into that special use requirement. So we have some work to do, but let's see if you've mitigated anything. Let's see if you've mitigated anything first. Okay, go ahead.
So SHPO, we submitted to them prior to submission to the planning board. We have not heard back from them yet.
Okay, so we're pending SHPO.
So, right, so when we get the correspondence back from them, we will be sure to provide it to the board. The fuel tank issues as they relate to the aquifer.
Right, so Chris mentioned that he was going to provide the double wall detail of what that looks like, but more importantly, Zorian mentioned that, you know, there's mitigating factors of training those people and what measures we're going to take as the owner of the application to ensure the neighbors of the community who are going to flood this building when this public hearing goes out as to what you're going to do to make sure that it's being mitigated. So if you haven't got that far yet, that's fine. It's just, it's on our list.
Okay, so in the EAF at the back, we did provide what the, and most of these are, not all, are DEC requirements for a trilling cold storage facility. So it goes into, you know, what they'll have on site as far as the tanks go. So it's 2 to 12,000 gallon underground storage tanks. You know, they're required to be double walled. They have testing requirements, maintenance requirements, inspection requirements, training requirements. So it's all written into here. And like I said, that's all based on the fact that they'll have to register this facility with the DEC. They'll be subject to all those state laws that have over time, you know, been adjusted based on, you know, other sites that have had failures. So those are, you know, much more stringent now than they have been in the past. But I can go through some of these.
No, it's just going to be the topic. You're obviously not ready to go through every item because we're still waiting on traffic and we still have a lot of items that are outstanding, which tonight's application could be quick. It's just, I want to make sure that the items that we talked about on our post-meeting letter are mitigated before we even talk about the new things. So we talked about the AP overlay district and what we're going to do. We talked about what we're going to do with the church. Do we have a response from the church on what you're going to do for mitigating, whether a fence or landscaping or?
Yes, so there was additional landscaping added, some trees, since obviously it's an open grassland at the moment. Additional trees were added between the church and the project site for additional screening there.
Okay. So we're going to need a landscaping calculation and a bond, which is a part of our town code. So just add that to your list of calculating that item of landscaping, what your proposal, which is including the material, installation, and maintenance. Those items go to our planner at CPL. Greg and his team, Christian is here, and they will review your calculations and confirm that that bond amount is accurate. Okay. Keep going. Go ahead.
For the scenic byway, we provided the architectural elevation.
Yep.
Any questions on that?
Okay.
Or feedback, you know, open to that. Was there anything else related to scenic byway that was discussed last?
Just to be clear, when you say south elevation, is that facing 209?
Yeah.
Yes,
that side is nice.
The top one.
The top one is what 209 looks at if you're at the bus ground.
Yes.
Okay. Any other items on your side before we go to the board?
Let's see, I think that's about it. Yeah, so that information for, you know, the petroleum storage, right at the end of the year. So yeah.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, and board, this board, we deal with a lot of details, right? We go through details of something that's the code. Most of our work is involved in going through a lot of details. That lands for this is a special use permit. And special use permit, maybe you can pass out.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Not pass out, just pass out the document. special use permit in our code requires us to look at 4 or 5 different items. And I'm not gonna read all of them.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So let me just.
Yep.
So I think we have to look at this from the perspective of, do we want another gas station? And do we want it here? Is this the appropriate place? I've made some conclusions about it, and that's essentially what this, what we're passing out.
Yeah.
Does it fit? So look at the broader perspective. First of all, beautiful rolling hill, historic church next door. This, if you got a chance to read the traffic study, there are A through F categories in the traffic study. This site is already at E, which means it has one more to go before it becomes a.
You're talking about level of service.
Yeah, this is the level E.
It has one more to go before it's F, which is a failing grade. And the applicant, if I understand it correctly, has said whether they build or they don't build, it's gonna go to F with the projected amount of increase in traffic anyway, both sometime over the next 2 years. Definitely, if it gets built, it's gonna be announced the moment it's built. So this particular kind of project for this particular site, given all the exigencies that we're dealing with right now in terms of traffic, just doesn't fit the site. I mean, even something like hours of operation, we're not letting any gas station stay open 24 hours. We don't let any gas station here stay open 24 hours to begin with. 10 or 11 o'clock, I forget exactly, but we shut them down and the lights have to go down to, to protect the rural nature of the community. And I see it making comments there, getting to the specifics. I'm more concerned with, does this board even want another gas station at this site, which is already a traffic nightmare? The hours that you did your tracking, miss all the hours when school buses are leaving the school garage and returning to the school garage, which would be from about 5:45 or 6 in the morning till about 9 o'clock. And at night, I'm not sure, but you have a much condensed period, which is not acceptable. School garage is right across the street. So I'm concerned with the bigger issue that us going to some neighbors in this. Should we even allow this to proceed? Ergo, at some point, I think this board should go through the details of the seeker that they provided us with. And we need to determine whether or not this fits. This is going to be a pause deck, and it's not a neg deck in my estimation. It's probably a pause deck. But even beyond that, do we want to even proceed under the special use?
Right, so why don't we go to that? So in front of you, board members, you have 140-55, which is the special use review criteria that the planning board is required to review on any site that is applying for a special use permit. Planning board in acting upon the special use shall also be approving with modifications or disapproving the site plan application connected therewith, taking into consideration not only the criteria contained above, but also the following special use criteria. A, whether the proposed use will have a detriment or positive impact on adjacent properties or the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of town of Rochester. Do you guys have this? I think I sent one down for you to share. No?
I'll look on with Serene.
Never mind, you go.
B, if the proposed use is one judged to present detrimental impacts, whether an approval could be conditioned in such manner as to eliminate or substantially reduce those impacts. C, whether the use will have a positive or negative effect on the environment, job creation, the economy, housing ability, or open space preservation. D, whether the granting of an approval will cause an economic burden or community facilities or services, including but not limited to highways, sewage treatment facilities, water supplies, and firefighting capabilities. The applicant shall be responsible for providing such improvements or additional services as may be required to adequately serve the proposed use, and any approval shall be so conditioned. The town shall be authorized to demand fees in support of such services where they cannot be directly provided by the applicant. This shall specifically apply to, but not be limited to, additional fees to support fire district expenses. E, whether the site plan indicates the property will be developed and improved in a way which is consistent with the character which this chapter and the town's comprehensive plan are intended to produce or protect, including appropriate landscaping and attention to aesthetics and natural feature preservation. So with review of the site plan approval, right, because you, as a special use application, you have to go through site plan and special use. Phil mentioned some traffic imperfections, which we have to overcome. The town board, the planning board mentioned potential for a scenic byway concern. There's obviously a traffic elephant in the room. The AP overlay district is here, so the potential of mitigating with gas in the ground could be a detriment on water supply with a neighboring trailer park and campground of 450 sites. SHPO, we obviously are outstanding on that regardless of what it comes back. We have the church next door, which requires some landscaping. We have three options and three routes we can go. Option one, we can continue with the special use requirements, go down the road of seeker and go through seeker and have a vote from the board based on the seeker information you provided, and then making a determination on a declaration of significance. That's option number one. Option two, we can go around the room and see what the board says on where they are in the feelings of what you've provided so far, what's outstanding, and what the next steps are. Or option number three, we can wait to see what Phil wants to do with traffic and getting a response from the New York State Department of Transportation. Put this on hold for 3 or 4 or 5 months, 5 years, whatever it takes from them, because they don't return my phone call, let alone anybody else's. Okay, so if you want us to go through seeker, we've done it before. We've been here till 1 in the morning. Tonight's a great night to do it. We can do that. If you want to go around the room and see
What said you wanted to get out of here?
if we're going to do seeker tonight, I'm here for it. Dave,
So in theory, a special use is a use permitted if it meets those 5 criteria.
correct,
So this is not currently a permitted use.
correct.
A typical process would be you go through that first.
Sure.
Because you don't even know if we're gonna allow it.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, your criteria are in and out of site plan review where more common special use permits are, it can only be a certain, there's measurable parameters. And if you meet these, you don't have those. You've got this sort of up in the air stuff. However, you have the one parameter that's established is that primary access can't be on 209 without further documentation. It clearly states in your code.
If there's an alternative.
If there's an alternative, it clearly exists, which is the town road.
Medicons road.
Medicons, regardless of its level of service, until you reconcile what access is gonna be, the site plan can't really be developed.
Right, it's an unresolved
And it's
issue.
not, there's a presentation that it's up to DOT, but there are often situations where the town disagrees with DOT or DEC for that matter.
Sure.
You can't overrule them, but it is not unusual that a town would choose not to do what DOT says. That can happen.
So
We can't make somebody do something on a state right of way that DOT won't approve.
Right.
But you don't have to do what DOT says.
So Mark, the 3 options you gave are not the 3 options available. I think that's what Dave is saying.
Well, we have an unresolved issue.
So the real issue that I'm bringing up, there's 3 options out there. Might be 10 options.
Sure.
The thing that I'm bringing up is because do we even want to go through this? Put them through the fine course and our timing course. Does it meet all of these 5 conditions? I don't think it does.
Just for speaking for what I see,
Right.
because as my supplemental review noted, they provided significant additional documentation. It would be my sense that they want to proceed. Given the level of documentation you've been provided, they're not here with stuff on a napkin or a tablecloth. It's thinking, hey, what do you think of this? You've actually got significant.
So you're saying we can't say.
You could. I'm just.
Okay, so don't.
My sense, having seen, many applications.
Listen,
They provided
a lot of information. That doesn't mean that this is the place to put another gas station.
Correct. Well, Troy, I don't think we're here tonight looking for.
I can't hear you. Got to speak louder.
We're not here tonight looking for a vote on seeker, but I think what we'd like to get out of tonight is, go through the 5 different items, which we have started to do.
Yep.
It's our opinion that as Dave said, it's a permitted use if, you know, you meet those criteria. So we'd like to hear the board's feedback on those specific items, and if there's mitigation that needs to be provided that we don't have tonight, like DOT, you know, we'll be doing our homework there. But I think we're looking to have that discussion of how we can mitigate these.
And that's a reasonable discussion. Boards are supposed to be reasonable. However, there does come a point in time, if it's permitted in the code, out of the box, that's one thing. If it needs a special use permit, the board exercises and can exercise more discretion. I'll let our attorney tell me your full hot air jokes. But I believe we have far more discretion. And I'm simply at the point, Chair, where this doesn't fly in this location. I don't care how much information.
Right, so I'd like to
Even
just-
if somebody came back, the DOT came back and said, we'll give you whatever you want. We'll give you a light, we'll give you turning lanes, we'll give you this. It's like, no, stop. It doesn't belong here.
Right, so I'd like to go to the special use requirements, because that's what we're gonna base our conversation tonight on.
Well, maybe we can hear from the rest of it.
Well, yeah, I'd like
That might be the
to,
only-
I still, hang on, still like to go back to this as to the focus on what we're here for tonight. Like they said, we wanna make sure we have this as an ability to utilize or not. So let's go through this, then I'd like to go around to the board and have everybody have their opportunity to speak, and then we can go where we're gonna go next. So A, whether the proposed use will have a detriment or positive impact on adjacent properties or the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the town of Rochester. In conversations in the first meeting, we discussed the church was a potential impact, the campground was a potential impact for water, and the trailer park was a potential impact for water and septic. B, if the proposed use is one judged to present detrimental impacts, whether an approval could be conditioned in such manner as to eliminate or substantially reduce those impacts. That's potential. We're not there. We haven't really mitigated that. C, whether the use will have a positive or negative impact on the environment. We talked about that with gas tanks in the ground, job creation in the economy, and housing ability or open space. D, whether granting the approval will cause an economic burden on community facilities or services, but not limited to highways. We have not met with the highway supervisor at all. We have not found their involvement, whether there be an approval for the access off of Medicahonks Road, which we need to do. Sewage treatment facilities, we've talked about it briefly because you have an apartment upstairs and you have bathrooms downstairs. Water supplies, obviously we're in an AP overlay district. Is there a mitigating factor with being water there that could be contaminated? We talked about that briefly. And then firefighting capabilities, which I don't know, we'll have to get a letter from the fire department, which we do on every application for their input. E, whether the site plan indicates the property will be developed and improved in a way which is consistent with the character which this chapter and the town's comprehensive plan are intended to produce and protect. In my opinion, based on your landscaping plan that would be submitted, we would need to confirm with our planners on if this is within the town comprehensive plan or not. So that's something that they're gonna have to review both of those documents, then provide us a memorandum basically. So with all of that, just from the reading of this, I'm gonna go around and give the opportunity for board members to sort of weigh in as to their input on 140-55, and are we even in compliance or not? So I'm gonna start with Anne Marie. I hope I didn't take the wind out of your sails, because I'm.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, of course.
Just keep in mind, you know, what I would suggest is that we provide this additional information.
Sure.
Why we think it might be. So,
Absolutely.
You know, you don't have to decide right now, you know, if it does or does not. You know, certainly we'll love to hear the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't agree with that.
Oh, that's okay.
I agree with everything you're saying. Rick.
Hey, guys, let's go around the room.
I agree with everything you're saying, Rick. I've walked on Medicahonks Road literally since 1974. It's where the schools drop the kids off during the after-school program. It is extremely busy. When skate time was coming in, again, that's a different business. They jump through so many hoops just to build on that property. The amount of accidents, I'm also retired law enforcement, so I do know a little bit about accidents. The amount of accidents that are on that road, and I'm sure Peter can tell you too, it's not safe for people. People cross from the other side of the road just to walk up the road to go swim in the creek. There is an Irish camp, which are 75 families. At any given time, there's 500 people. That's approximately I don't know what was last weekend, over 200 cars that are there. There are people that go to the little store up the road. There are people that are constantly using that road to access Ackford Speedway. We had I think it was fatality the other night, I'm not sure, one of the 209, and they had to go up around the back roads, which if your gas station's there, that's not gonna fly. I did speak with people in the school. They were completely unaware that this was happening. I spoke to people in the church. They were not happy with it at all. They were unaware of it. We also had the cidery. We also had the brewery. When we have concerts at the brewery, the traffic comes down Lower Whitfield all the way down to Mill Hook, which is a long way if you can get a map and look through that. The campers coming in on Fridays and leaving on Sundays, that could be from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. And I point to Peter because he knows what I'm talking about. They will come all the way down from the campground past the
Trail.
manufactured residence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And storage.
Yeah, and storage facilities all the way down. And they will be on, and then they'll start going into skate time. So they're over there. So, plus we're near this beautiful historic church. And I know that people are going to leave skate time. And if your entrance is there, they're just going to cut a cost. And that's going to cause problems with people getting T-boned. But your gas station will be used as a cut through. And that's just the way it is. People don't want to wait on 209. They're going to go up to Medicahonts. They're going to come down Medicahonts and cut through. It happens. It happens a lot with the gas station that's on 209, right near Queens Highway. Constantly happens. It happens with the PX on Whitfield Road when people want to, go up and down during the speedway on Friday night. So I mean, I'm all for improvements and stuff, but I cannot see how this is going to enhance our area. I just can't see it. And I'm off my soapbox.
Okay, thanks, nice soapbox, Zach.
I completely agree with everything you say. Also, I agree with Rick about the 24 hours a day operation. There's no business here that does that, so I think that needs to be moved off of the table. I also don't think that we as a board have enough information to move forward from our municipalities, like our fire department and our highway superintendent. So I think that I would like to see that if we move forward and if before we say as a board, we're not looking at this anymore as a gas station.
I think I stated my case. I'm sorry I was so adamant about it, but I know we want to be reasonable. We want to allow applicants to mitigate that which is of concern.
Sure.
This is not mitigatable because it doesn't fit here. How do you make a gas station? It's like trying to make, what's the saying about the sow's ear?
It's a little person of size here.
How do you make a gas station look anything other than a gas station?
Understood.
Right? It's not gonna be a landscaping business, it's not gonna look pretty, it doesn't belong here, so I'll stop.
Zorian?
At the first meeting, there's some statistics showing that this gas station would be number 3 within 3.6 miles.
Yep.
And
I think it's 6 and 5
would be 0.9 miles from existing station, corner of Queens Highway in 209, and 1.5 miles from Sanoka Station, Whitfield. So obviously we don't need a gas station here, but I'm struggling to find administrative means to prove it. If you understand what I mean. I want to follow up on traffic studies. Somehow on Saturday, you didn't study the time between 5 and 10 p.m. Are you aware there is a concert venue, Elwood, people come in and go in right that time? And could be a couple hundred cars there. And once in a while, skating rink, because you went there, was like a month ago, so many cars on parking. They have some demonstration skating competition. So right across from the potential gas station. Then again, I'm jumping ahead. You pointed out that electrical vehicles, you're gonna put parking space. You need to put time is changing. We're going in future. Trucks now have becomes electrical. Those electrical stations should be there, not just a space, but they have to be completed. And actually going in future,
in addition to the, again, I mean, agreement to the price of gasoline to design electrical charging station. So, basically, at the very beginning, I said, the community is not gonna benefit from this.
Thank you. Cindy?
It's my understanding that it needs to meet all 5 of the special use review criteria, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. In my personal opinion, it does not meet A or B, and possibly also not C. Although that's kind of subjective, so I'm gonna say it definitely doesn't. There's a negative on A and on B on the criteria. It's in an aquifer protection area. It ruins a scenic vista, and as Zorian said, we already have lots of gas stations. It's not gonna bring jobs to our area. There's nothing to recommend.
Peter?
I am in complete agreement. I think that there are a lot of problems here. My big problems are the aquifer, the danger of the aquifer, and what can happen there. I do not think it applies to all 5 of the special use criteria. I reiterate that the traffic study eliminated the hours of operation of Westwood, Arrowwood, the camp, and then the
racetrack
campground and the racetrack. So the racetrack is the other one that I had too.
And
And the skating rink right there. So I think that those, you know, like most of us here, we've had a lot of traffic and there's just been many accidents. I think the idea of widening 209 to accommodate this is just, you know, I just don't think that that's, mostly I just, you know, think that it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. We don't need it.
So in our position, you know, it's to also give you an option, you know, an opportunity as to like what we do see that would fit in that location, right? You know, low density, commercial, a hardware store, or something of like a liquor store or wine store, something that is not necessarily so impactful on the land, number one, but potentially on the traffic flow. Keeping in mind that this board is probably not going to approve access off of 209 at all. That access is going to need to be coming off of Medica Hunts Road. Already with an E designation for traffic, you're already behind the 8 ball. So granted, if you decide that you wanted to move forward and that's you have the ability to do so, we're going to look for a lot of mitigating factors in addition to potentially a traffic light at Medica Hunts, no access off of 209, access only off of Medica Hunts, which needs to go through the highway superintendent. And now you have all those other mitigating factors that we've discussed, but we really haven't deep dived into. Aquifer Protection Overlay District, neighboring SHPO, church, school grounds across the street. So there's just a lot of moving factors. But I want to give you that opportunity, you know, go back, do your homework, do what you need to do. But if you decide that you want to come back, we're starting with secret. We're ready. Okay, so that's where we're going to go. So just wanted to give you that feedback. You heard what the board had to say. It doesn't seem, based on the information provided, that a gas station would fit at that location currently. If you're interested in coming back to the August agenda, that deadline is July 29th to the planning board secretary. And we will go from there.
Yes.
Any questions for us? Okay, we'll see you then.
You're not beating.
I understand. If we see you then, we'll see you then. If not, just shoot us an email, let us know how you guys. Yeah, it's not for.
What I did was facts, not I
I appreciate honesty instead of, you know.
And we don't want to lead you on, you know, I don't want to go down a road that might not work.
I mean, trust me, I look at good gas station here, okay? But we already have them.
I guess you're.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next application, DB 24-25, a special use permit in R2 district. This is a new application for Blue Fairy Farm LLC. The applicant and the owner is Molly Suggs. The representative is Alejandro Ronfini from Demo Architecture PLLC. This is located at 104 Bakertown Road. The applicant is proposing a commercial events facility special use permit located at an existing single-family dwelling site with a proposed expansion for farm-related activities and learning events. This location is not currently operating as a farm. Alessandro, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. Give you the 30-second elevator speech.
Yes, so the owner prior myself as an architect to design this learning center as part of the farm. The farm is actually operating on site of 98 Bakertown Road.
So there's a current farm operating by the same owner at 98 Bakertown?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. And they recently purchased this property to expand the farm operation and to build a learning center.
Okay.
There's meant to be a space where there will be farm-related activities. So the description currently in the plan, which is designed to be in the future, chemical preparation is a dairy farm, so preparation of jams and the products of crops.
So the reason that this is a special use permit is because it's in an R2 district, not an AR3 district. So it's not an agriculture district currently. You're looking for special use to utilize agriculture in that district.
Yes.
Okay.
Use that, and then the main use, the daily use of the space will be really like a learning center. So the idea is to promote it's a biodynamic farm, procedure, etc. They want to have learning classes about that, and again, the cooking classes, potentially rent the space for yoga and other physical activities. So that's why special event facility was the description.
So a couple.
Site is 98.
Hang on a second.
So directly next door.
A couple of items that jump out at me, right?
Yes.
So you have the neighboring owner is 98, which is the same owner as this owner.
That's right.
They purchased this property to expand their current farm and operation
Yes.
onto this property, which is not an agriculture district.
Yeah.
Correct? This property that you're speaking of, I've been getting my hair cut there for 30 years, okay? The front of that property is a swamp.
Yes.
I've seen you guys have a bulldozer there. You're doing some mitigation to remedy water flow, to transition how that water is going to be utilized on the land, number one. Number two, you have a a double wide manufactured home on that property with an pre-existing garage, two-door garage, that you are looking to expand the garage larger and to utilize the house and the garage to fulfill the learning center and the farm operations.
The house will remain a residence.
Okay.
It's currently rented and it's going to be separated from the going to be a separate use from the rest of it, but it's part of the same property. The garage, yes, will be converted into one of the two spaces, part of the learning center.
Okay.
We'll have an addition with all the services, bathrooms, mechanical problems, etc.
Okay.
And then the bigger addition will be for
So a couple things that jump out at me. One, we need to talk about 140-55 because we're looking for a special use in a district that's not permitted. That's number one.
Yep.
Number two, we need to talk about water flow mitigation of how you're going to work on that evacuation of getting that water off the property, mitigated to dry that land out. Number three, we need to talk about parking, okay, because you're proposing 22 parking places on that swamp land potentially. So we need to figure out how you're going to stormwater prevention, pollution prevention program, whatever you're going to do with your SWIP,
yes,
to mitigate that water flow that comes off of Bakertown Road, and figure out that process of how that water is going to flow, how traffic is going to flow. There's a very steep access off of Bakertown Road that drops down. That potentially could require some traffic studies, which sight distances, now that you're expanding your use from single family. So we're going to need to get our consultant with CPL potentially involved on what that would look like. And then we need to talk about the farm operation, because you are currently a farm operation at another address.
Yes.
And you're expanding that farm operation into currently a non-farming residential district. That's AR3 to a residential district. So we're going to either need to talk about expanding that district, going down those use of special use, and then how all those things are going to flow together. Hours of operation, lighting. So there's a lot of concerns that are just jumping out at us as we talk about the special use permit. That's all in number one category. Number two, you're in a heavily dense predominant area of Bakertown Road that has a ton of homes that are there, pre-existing homes that are of upper echelon, upper values. The areas, the values of that area are pretty high. So we're gonna need to talk about, like, is there an adverse impact to that with this potential use, and how that could potentially flow. So before I do anything, I'm gonna go around the room, just get everyone's involvement, and then we can get our consultants involved and see where we go, and you can take that feedback and we'll go from there, okay? I'm gonna start with Peter.
You know, at first glance, it just looks like there's a lot going on a small piece of property.
Right.
There's a, 3,300 square foot addition on the 1,000-foot garage converted and 22 parking spaces. 2.5 acres, with all the, wet issues. It just seems like crazy amount of.
Right, so we're basically taking a single family residence with a garage and keeping the single family use that's currently in use, and then expanding the remaining of the property to have the maximum use, which is gonna grow by more than 50% of the current use, right? So we're gonna take what we have and then potentially double
It just seems like way lot to go on in this piece of property in this location to me.
it. Great, Cindy.
Yeah, what Peter said, it's a lot to go on that piece of property, but I have a question. Is the adjacent parcel lands of Blueberry Farm LLC, how big is that parcel, and is it zoned ag?
It is zoned AR3.
4-0.
And it's 4-ish acres.
And it's 4-ish acres.
4.06.
Okay.
And that's
And
a
there's 2
90
acres right there. And there's the 4. And that's the 1. Well, this one goes back, which is slice.
So 98, for people's familiarity with 98, 98 is a 2 dwelling property that has an existing barn on it. I've been in it in my past. It has 2 existing single family dwellings that are more like cabins, weekend retreat type style of sizes, with an existing barn that's on it, and then a cliff that falls off the back down the property. It's a narrow lot, skinny and long, has a pond out front.
So if it's all gonna be farmland, and the same people own the whole thing, why don't you just make it one property?
Because it would still be in 2 zoning districts.
But I'm actually looking
But
on the public record at 98, and maybe they did a zoning change, but it says R2 on Ulster County.
Zach is absolutely correct.
it is.
Or
on-
98.
I did a detailed look, see the same thing. The only agricultural land that's zoned agricultural in that whole area is 28 acres. More, you could have
Okay,
those
but it's
maps.
not Blueberry,
No,
so, okay, never mind.
Zach is right, it's all true.
Yeah, you got a lot going on that property.
Yes.
And the wet is the biggest, the drainage swale through there, but that's the biggest concern.
Yeah, if I can, we've done, we're working with Medivac makers on the septic system, and last week we did some investments with Portal Health to design the system. So Dylan is working on the design. What we've shown is a rough dimension of what we think is a correct sizing for the proposed use. But of course, we need this analysis to.
Right, and it's gonna have a pump station too.
It's gonna have to pump station, yes.
Cindy, anything else?
No.
Zorian?
Honestly, I didn't do my homework because I was looking for narrative which wasn't there.
There's a narrative in the application.
No, there is only description by survey.
By what?
That narrative, when I open that narrative, basically describes the properties from border of the properties. There is nothing what they're gonna do there.
Oh, this, we have renderings, we have plans, we have description of the.
No, I'm talking about our folder.
In our folder, yeah, now it's.
So in
I have
the
a narrative.
sketch plan folder in the Google Drive, there's a snippet of what they want to do there. and
It's the 3rd page of the CEO determination.
So
Addendum.
I'm
Okay,
sorry,
so-
I had problems finding the narrative.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, but anyway, it sounds like it's R2. What neighbor gonna say? It's gonna be what, parking lot, 22 cars, and how it's gonna hurt the neighborhood?
Agreed. Rick?
So I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but for all the same reasons that I don't like the gas station. First of all, this needs a special use permit, so you have to go through all 5 of those items that we went through before. Everything in this area is R2. R2 is entitled low density residential. There's a piece of property about 3 properties away, which is 28 acres, that's residential agricultural. That's the only agricultural land anywhere near this property. The owner is not a farmer.
And Rick, just to interrupt, that AR3 zone district is actually access off of Lower Woodfield. It doesn't actually
Yes,
access
right.
on Baker Road.
The owner is somebody who lives in Miami. Clearly, she can't be farming this, so I don't know who's farming it, whether this is gonna be actually farmed by the owner or somebody who's hired to farm it. Peter's absolutely right. I think Cindy mentioned also. It's still within the bulk requirement of the property in terms of for the coverage. It's 30%, still under 30%, but you increase the usage or the ground coverage rather between the cars and the new buildings by 50%. Not the least of which is that you got 22 potential parking spots in a residential area. Single house, maybe you need 4 cars,
max
22. This is, I didn't even see, it wasn't that, I didn't travel out there, but I didn't even see that the marshal is going on the front. So I think, unfortunately, this is a non-starter also in terms of remember, special use permit is not going to have an impact most appropriately to the people in the area. There's no way education is a wonderful thing, but there's no way that I want an educational facility in the middle of an R2, not the least of which you got another commercial events facility. I don't want another commercial events facility, particularly since it's not agricultural, this property, but the next thing you know, we do a commercial event under agricultural coverage of some sort, which you can do every night of the week. Remember, the ag wars are completely different. If you become a farm, so commercial events, no. R2, 22 parking spots, absolutely not. This is dead on the block.
Zach?
I second that. This is a 3,000 square foot commercial event space, whether it's for classes or farming, it's gonna turn into somebody's gonna want their wedding there because there's a kitchen and you're in a highly residential area. I don't think that this type of special use belongs here.
Emery?
Well, I just happen to know the area just like you do.
Hey.
It's swampy over there, and I know that, we've had a lot of people come before this board for many years now saying that this is what it's going to be, but because it was given permission, because it was an event location, it became something completely different. With all due respect to the neighbors over there, I think you're gonna have a fight on your hands because they're not gonna want that. They're not gonna want that at all. It's not like, first of all, if I was getting married, it's not really a pretty area. And I just don't think it's a good idea. You've got this whole swampy thing going on and I don't know. I mean, for me, I just can't see it adding anything to the neighborhood, so.
I mean, could you outline specifics of what they want to do, which I know you sort of already had, and then we can work it into our approval?
So this is what we're gonna do. If you wanna come back, we're gonna set an escrow for $5,000, which is paid to the town of Rochester, town clerk.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll be provided to Jasmine upon your next submittal for your application. Application deadline is July 29th, which is submitted to Jasmine electronically and in person with the map requirement from the town of Rochester Planning Board. We would need to have answers on all the items that we discussed in addition to 140-55 and how it would fit that, how your proposed use fits in that criteria.
Yeah.
And then what we'll do is we'll start with seeker. As we discussed in the previous application, you're gonna be required to submit the long form, which you've already done. And then we're gonna go through that long form of what you provided based on the use that you're proposing, and then make a determination ourselves.
Okay.
In order to proceed, we'll need the escrow, and then we will send it out to Mr. Church, and we'll send it out to Christian at CPL, and they will do their water flow and all their use impacts based on code, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Alrighty?
I think you should do something else with the property.
I think there's a lot going on here based on what she's proposing. Maybe potentially of minimalizing the proposed use, potentially.
Sell it.
I think they just bought it.
Not mine.
Okay, we'll see you in the future, hopefully. All right, thank you. Okay, board members, a couple of things we need to do, and I need to add a couple things to our agenda. So before we get all packed up, hang out with me a minute. You, this is important for you. Okay. First things first. Approval of the June 10th, 2024 meeting minutes. I need a motion for that.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Meeting minutes.
Anne Marie, motion by Zach. All in favor? In favor. Any Rick, 6-0. Okay, we need to talk about local F and comments to the town board. Did everybody have the opportunity to look at this? This is a zoning designation change recommendation coming from the town board that they'd like to change a zoning designation on Old Mine Road. If you remember correctly, this is Captain Omnipotent or Barrett and Trevor. They came to us about building a house in the industrial district. They did not meet setbacks. We told them to go to the town board to change their zoning designation to be in the hamlet rather than industrial. They have done so. It was at our recommendation. I have no comments and we'll write a letter to that unless someone has any objections. It's just a single family dwelling in the wrong industrial district. All good? Okay, I will respond to that. Annual training hours requirement. Jasmine sent out emails on training. We are about a little more than halfway throughout the year. We do have another training that we will have with Mr. Gordon towards later of the year. If you need training hours, they're available. You can reach out to Jasmine also. I need a motion to cancel the workshop meeting for the end of the month.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
Second. Zach, Maureen, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and then lastly, Christian, who is sitting here from CPL, graciously, so we can go over his last item and he can get the hell out of here, has done an outstanding job on reviewing Nadine's submittal request for the bonds on DeJager. So this has been the total projection of the construction prior to doing any of the land work of building the house. This is of the infrastructure of roads, culverts, excavation, things like that. That bill, which Nadine came up with, $910,825.
And 270.
And has been $270,900 as the bond amount that would be placed for the. What is happening here?
The messages. Okay.
The CPL finds that the recommendation that has come from Nadine is acceptable.
So I think total $1.8 million, or $1 million, rather $1 million. 1,180,000.
Whatever those two total.
Yeah.
Okay,
First
so
is the construction bond, the second is the restoration.
right, one is the construction of the bond, and the other is the restoration. Now, two things are going to happen, folks. Nadine created this. CPL has agreed with her calculations. We need to also agree and accept that this is adequate. No problem with that. That's number one. Number two, we are going to send it to the town board for their attorney to review the calculations. And if there's any suggestions from the town board's attorney that there's a change, they'll get back to us. I don't anticipate that to happen. Number three, in the event that DeJager has seen this and still has a pulse, there's a potential that they will be coming back to us for a revision on their site plan. Be prepared for that. Because this is, I don't know if this is something that they were expecting or not. So just letting you know that, that there could be potential revision to their existing site plan based on too costly.
The bond's not gonna cost that. That's the amount of the
Right,
bond,
that's
but you
the-
pay
that's-
10%.
Right.
I don't know if they're prepared to pay anything. So
Okay.
just letting you know that if that comes in front of us, it would not be a surprise. I need a motion to accept the bond as presented from CPL and Nadine. Okay, I have Rick and I have Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any I only have one eye. Wake up, people. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Just for my own information, Dave, what do they charge on bonds these days? 10%?
10% last time. 10%.
I abstained from that, from this decision.
You abstained from that, so 601. Peter. Okay.
Are we still on?
I need yes, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting at 10 o'clock.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second,